Hey, you three. Oh, got another one to record. This is, it's kind of seeming like a lot. I'm not really sure what this is even for anymore, you know?
Come on, you know what it's for. We have to complete the Great Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, but 358 over 2 days wasn't really even that big of a deal, and it's I'm not even sure if it's considered one of the better games.
But what is Kingdom Hearts?
Yeah, that's a great question. I still don't really have answers to that either.
It's the gathering place of hearts, isn't it?
Yeah, definitionally, but it's such a huge series and means so many different things to so many different people. And speaking personally, it's a huge deal, and I know I'm not alone in that.
Is Kingdom Hearts really that important?
What?
Are you crazy?
Yeah.
I just don't see...
Come on. You're wondering about that now?
Well, I don't understand since I don't have a heart.
Come on, dude, with the whole nobody shtick again?
Roxas.
Look, I know I came in here with some, tired energy, but it's so important to look at these games and to see what they mean to everybody, because I think everybody's got this special part of themselves that Kingdom Hearts speaks to, right? We've all been young, we've all had these sort of angsty moments, and so I think by digging through it, we get to know each other better, and I don't know.
That's why we fight, to find out what it's about.
Exactly.
Okay. I guess you're right.
Yeah, man. All right, well, let's record an episode, shall we? Welcome to Video Game Podtimism. It is the Optimist video game variety show where two best friends and another person talk about the okayest games of yesteryear. My name is Chase.
And I'm David.
And with us today on this bonus episode about Kingdom Hearts 358 days over 2 days, we have Brendon Bigley. Welcome, Brendon.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here for this game specifically.
Yeah, I was thinking about because we weren't even sure if we were going to cover 358 over 2 at some point, because we've been doing this ongoing series, and it's at first we were let's just do the big ones. Let's just do 1, 2, and maybe 3. And then we got to the end of 1. And we're okay, we need to cover Chain of Memories. It's such an important part of the plot.
Yeah. Many people are saying this. Yeah.
Many people are saying this. And
I need to play Chain of Memories. It's a thing a lot of people are screaming into the heavens these days. Yeah.
The people demand Chain of Memories.
That's what Tetsuya Nomura said, and I'm willing to believe him.
He did. And then a lot of people also said yes to that.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this in that episode, but he was hoping that would be a good. He said this about many of the games, but that he's hoping that each one of these is an easy entry point into the series. And I'm
incorrect.
Dude, none of these are easy entries into the series. Not at all.
That's very funny.
But so we finished that, and then I was I've 358 over 2. I don't know if it has a bad reputation, but I think most people are it's not the best one in the series or whatever.
I think people are starting to turn around on it. Is at least the sentiment that I'm picking up.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that is just the structure of the game is just so different than the rest of them. But once you play it and kind of meet it where it's at, I think it is. I think it's pretty good. And so my reaction was oh shit, I think we do actually have to cover this one. And then who is the one 358 over 2 days freak that I know? It's Brendon. Hello.
I'm waving. It's an audio medium, but I'm waving at the camera. Yeah, it's me.
For anybody who doesn't listen to Into the Aether.
Into the Days,
or
358 over 2 podcasts. Yeah.
Or NPC, or read wavelengths. What's your deal? Who's Brendon?
Yeah, sure. My name is Brendon. I host all those podcasts that you just talked about, and also write a blog that you just talked about. Into the Aether is a low-key video game podcast. We've been doing it for just over 6 years. We're on season 7 right now, which is wild. And the whole conceit of the show is essentially that we only talk about games that we have some good things to say about. That doesn't mean that we're not being critical and stuff, but generally speaking, the idea is that we're not talking about the latest game releases, because then we'll have to inevitably just dunk on something for 2 hours, and I don't want to do that every week forever.
It's kind of tiring. Yeah,
it is kind of tiring. I would much rather just kind of let my whims carry me. More recently started NPC with Federico and John over at MackStories.net, and that's a show about handhelds and just portable gaming in general. NPC stands for Next Portable Console, at least on our show. I'm currently surrounded by exactly 9 handhelds. They're all sitting on my desk because we just recorded an episode yesterday and had a lot of stuff to talk about. And yeah, I write a blog over at wavelengths.online. And that's just kind of whatever I'm feeling generally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just like writing and I don't do it enough. So I started a blog to kind of force myself to write more.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, excited to have you here.
Excited to be here.
Why don't we talk about this video game, huh?
Get into
Let's
it.
do it.
So for anybody who is very concerned about being spoiled for 358 over 2 days, don't worry, that won't happen quite yet. We're going to talk about it just kind of at a high level and then just walk through the plot beats.
Can I issue a correction immediately?
Yeah, please.
I didn't know this when we did so it's worth mentioning, we did a big episode a couple of years ago where we played as much of the good games from the Nintendo DS library as possible to talk about them. And we did a top 10, and on my top 10 was this game. And on that episode, I called it 358 over 2 days.
Yeah.
Not realizing that the actual way you're supposed to pronounce it is 358 days over 2.
Oh, no.
Which a bunch of people called me on because they were like, how is this one of your favorite games of the Nintendo DS and you don't even know what it's called? And B, now that I know why it's called that, which maybe we can get into later, I actually think it's a better name. I think the name is bad regardless, but I think it's a better name than 358 over 2 days at least.
It does eventually start to make sense as to why it's called that.
That's the unfortunate thing with Kingdom Hearts is the more of it you play, the more it all makes sense. And it has this reputation for being this like completely obfuscated, unfollowable story. But then when you actually play them and you feel them in your heart of hearts, it all starts to click together. And I think this is one of those games that like really, really works.
100%, yeah. A common refrain that we keep coming back to when we're talking about these games on the pod is just that, like, if you just like unfocus your eyes a little bit, the game works a lot better. Like, it's like kind of asking you, like, there's so much shit going on. Just like you can pay attention for sure, and like Organization 13's cool and all, but like you're supposed to feel this game rather than like understand it.
Yeah, it's Tenet, right? It's that one line from Tenet.
Yes, yeah.
Where she goes, don't try to understand it, feel it.
Yes, which feels like appropriate. I don't know if that goes all the way to 3. David, you've beaten 3, so like you know way more about that than either of us do. But
I didn't beat 3.
3 is a little bit more challenging in some respects, but definitely you can still feel a lot, but that one I think is the most disconnected from that sort of vibe because it does feel like so much more is focused on like the Disney aspects of it all as opposed to like the actual characters in the game. But I think that's a totally different conversation.
Yeah, we will get
for
there
a while
eventually.
about that. Yeah.
I can't wait to finally finish that game one day.
The ending is the best part.
That's
like
what everyone says.
The last 5 or 6 hours is really quite good, I would say.
Oh my God. Yeah, I got to do it. I gave up when Jack Sparrow turned into 300 crabs and then went into the ocean.
He sure
did,
didn't he?
I think I need to stop playing this.
You're just like, I need to go reclaim some dignity now.
Yeah.
I barely played that game. Like, I bought it. I have a physical copy of Kingdom Hearts 3, and I don't think I got out of the Hercules level, which if I remember correctly is
that's the first
level.
That's number 1. Yeah.
I was just like, I don't think so, actually.
I love that for you. No, that's great.
Yeah.
I remember it came out the same week as Apex Legends. That was the other big problem.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's true. But anyways, okay, so 358 over 2 days. 358 days over 2.
Over 2. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I'm just going to call it days. So I don't fuck it up anymore.
Days is fine, yeah.
So a couple of like stats about this game. This came out in 2009 for the Nintendo DS, which for anybody who like is questioning whether why we're doing this one before 2, I think it kind of comes chronologically between those two, and I think it like does set up a lot of what goes on in 2. But I think if you're playing the games, this one fills in a lot of what goes on right before 2 and like kind of during Chain of Memories.
Yeah,
which makes sense for playing, but I think just like understanding what's happening in the plot and feeling what's going on, we chose to do it before.
It's like a Yakuza 0 to Yakuza 1 scenario, I think.
Kind of fills in like what's happening in between there.
I think you will have different experiences playing each of them first.
Yes, yeah.
Sure.
And I think like there's a lot of stuff going on in the beginning of 2 that like when I played it the first time, I was like, I just simply have no idea what's going on here. And like the intro stuff with Roxas in 2 is like wonderful, but the parts where they're like flashing back to what are scenes from this game, I'm like, I feel like I missed something so critical to what's happening here. So this was made by Square Enix in conjunction with this company called Hand, H.A.A. yada yada yada. And so far as I can tell, like this company is like they can sometimes help out with games that are being like ported from one place to another. And that's not necessarily that they're building it for a console, but it seems like they help out with like translating something that is on like maybe a more high fidelity system to one that is less high fidelity. And so my guess, I have nothing to support this, but my guess is that they probably Square Enix came to them and they're like, hey, we have this like Kingdom Hearts engine. Like, how do we get this on the DS? Because we need to make like a lot of compromises. And it seems like Hand might have been able to help them out there. You'll know some of their work, such as Final Fantasy Fables, Chocobo Tales, Final Fantasy Fables, Chocobo's Dungeon, and some of the World Ends With You stuff too. They're not Dream, which is the company that made that, but they helped out in a couple of ways.
Oh, they worked on Fantasy Life also.
They did, yeah. I was, which is a good game. I like Fantasy Life.
Shout out to Hand. Now that I know that.
Tetsuya Nomura is also like heavily involved here still, which is worth calling out just because like that's Mr. Kingdom Hearts in a lot of ways. Him and Yoko Shimomura, the person who developed the soundtrack, which none of these games would be the same without.
No.
So yeah, big influence there. Let's see. 2009 felt later than I thought this game came out.
I agree. Yeah.
It like feels like it came out much earlier, but like it being almost a 2010s game feels like kind of shocking to me.
Yeah. Because this then came out quite a bit later after Kingdom Hearts 2 then, didn't it?
Yeah, I think 2 came out like 2006, is that right?
Yeah.
Japan in the end of 2005 and then everywhere else 2006.
Yeah, good God. That's a long time. And like...
It's a long time for some pretty critical subtext to everything.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like you would have to play this so far after the fact and pretty far removed from Kingdom Hearts 2.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a run this had now that I'm looking at the timeline on wikipedia.org. Kingdom Hearts 2 in 2005, 2007 is Chain of Memories, coded, not recoded, coded in 2008 for feature phones, and then 2009 358 over 2 days. 2010 is Birth by Sleep and recoded.
Wow, unbelievable.
So
yeah,
2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, I guess.
They just wanted to do everything but number 3.
Yes. Yeah.
I get that sense. I've read a bunch of interviews with Nomura and he's like, yeah, like we got some ideas for 3, but like I really just want to do all this other shit beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, did he ever.
Do you think he was just like a kind of freaked out by the idea of actually making 3?
I don't know. My feeling is that he had a lot of stories he wanted to tell and that like Kingdom Hearts may have just been the place he could do that.
Right.
I'm sure it's also like making a ton of dough. So he's just like, well, I don't want to go and like make some other weird game. So like,
right.
I guess we can do this. I also like we just covered The World Ends With You. And I feel like a lot of like inspiration, at least from Dream, the company that made that, and this game too, is from Chain of Memories. Like both of them made that game, and Nomura went on to make this one and like the rest of them. But like you can feel the Chain of Memories stuff with like how you equip skills and shit like that. And the same thing with The World Ends With You. Like that feels like a Chain of Memories game, and especially with again the same kind of skill stuff that kind of like makes up how you build your character.
It almost feels like a George R.R. Martin situation where he's just feels like he's doing every project under the sun except for Winds of Winter. And I think it's just because he just wants to do other things. He's doing all of his sci-fi novels. He's doing all these shows and books and other books like anthologies of histories and whatnot about his world that he's created. So it's just, I don't know. I think it's just part of the creative process that these people just kind of follow a thread somewhere and kind of takes them away from what the rest of us want sometime, I guess.
When Jack Sparrow turns into 300 crabs in Winds of Winter, though, that's going to be a real weird moment.
So cool. Finally payoff that we've all been waiting for.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big moment. Big moment.
So I'm interested to hear pretty much everybody's experience with like playing this game this time, and then just Brendon as well, your history with the series. Because I think David and I probably talked about like, our whole Kingdom Hearts shtick a couple times now.
Yeah.
But like, how did you find yourself with the series? When did you play this game? Did you like it the first time? Did you like it this time? That kind of stuff.
Totally. Yeah. So Kingdom Hearts I fell into mainly because my mom is a big Disney fan and I had a PS2. And when Kingdom Hearts came out, I remember seeing an ad for it and being like, this is a Disney game where you go and just like experience all the Disney movies. And my mom was like, this is the one time I will purchase a video game for you. And I remember her like sitting in our basement watching me play it for the first like couple hours where there's like literally one cutscene where Donald and Goofy are there. And I think just kind of gave up. But I did not, dear listener. I kept playing and loved it. until the end when my PS2 broke. Well, not that my PS2 broke. My PS2 had a very specific weird bug where once I got to Castle Oblivion, I think it was, the game would just hang. And then I couldn't progress anymore. And I had a couple game series where I would just have weird issues like that, like the Jak and Daxter series. I could never really play because anytime I jumped up and did a ground pound, the PS2 would freeze. And that was just a problem with my PS2 specifically. So like, I thought it was the disc. I borrowed other people's Kingdom Hearts discs. Didn't work. It was just my PS2.
Man.
Whoa.
So I, to this day, actually have never finished Kingdom Hearts 1, which is a weird thing for me. I'm really trying to cruise my way to the end as quickly as I possibly can because I would like to experience it someday.
Yeah.
And then just kind of sat on my hands for a while until Kingdom Hearts 2 came out. I did not play Chain of Memories despite having a Game Boy Advance at the time. And I did not play Chain of Memories until 2020, when we did our Game Boy Advance bonus.
Right.
But Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, and that was like the end of 8th grade, kind of beginning of freshman year of high school for me, like around that area, which was like the most crucial moment of one's life to play Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yes, yeah.
And that game just like ruined me. Like Inside Out, like really just kind of took a hold over me. It was one of those ones where like when I finished it, I was like sobbing in the basement, and then I immediately was like, I need to get everything. Like I can't stop playing this game.
Yeah.
So I got 100%, unlocked everything so I could see the secret ending. Like I did everything you could do in Kingdom Hearts 2. And then again, just didn't play any of the side stuff at all because I think for a long time, the feeling online was kind of what we've been discussing. Like Nomura's doing everything except making Kingdom Hearts 3. And there's a piece of me that was like, I really want Kingdom Hearts 3. So I'm just going to almost like out of spite not play this other stuff to like vote with my wallet that I don't want to be playing spinoffs for the rest of my life. I just want the third one. I think that was a bad move in retrospect. Because now having played a bunch of the side stuff, I like it a lot, actually, as it turns out. You know, Birth by Sleep is fantastic. I remember playing that years and years ago. That's another one that I haven't finished. I played 2 of the 3 runs, I guess, that you get through in that game. But we eventually, as I alluded to before, we did an episode for Into the Aether where we played as much stuff for the Nintendo DS as possible. And I played Recoded and this game, 358 Days Over 2. And Recoded, I'll just touch on quickly.
Yeah.
Interesting thing. Feels amazing. I don't know if either of you have played it, but it like...
Not really.
No.
It feels so good to play.
Yeah.
Like the jump in the mechanics and just like the active movement and combat between this game and that one is like really a night and day experience. Because I think this game feels all right. Like it feels like pretty good. It's amazing how much they're able to make work on the Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
But Recoded feels amazing. The story, on the other hand, is like not great and almost not even worth playing in a lot of ways because it's essentially a remake of, as I was saying before, a feature phone game that was supposed to be a live service game where as they continued the story of Kingdom Hearts, they would continue adding stuff into Coded. So you essentially have this game that was like a live service game that was given up on, that was then ported to the Nintendo DS with as much story as they were able to produce before they had to shut it down. So it's like a really weird thing. It doesn't feel totally like a complete experience. I know it has its fans out there. I know there are some people who were like real Recoded sickos, and I see you and I understand why. I'm not one of those people. For me, 358 Days Over 2 like really took hold of me immediately in the process of doing that episode. Like it was one of the first games I picked up when we started doing that prep, because we prepped for those over like 6 to 8 months just about. And I just couldn't put it down. I just found the loop to be incredible. I found what was going on narratively and thematically to be fascinating. I think considering this is a game that is like almost wholly focused on what a lot of people consider to be like the worst aspect of Kingdom Hearts lore in Organization 13. I think like there's a lot of people who watch or like play Kingdom Hearts, and then as soon as you introduce the Organization 13 stuff, they're like, that's it. That's the moment where they went off the rails and they jumped the shark and nothing makes sense anymore. I think considering this is a game that is wholly focused on that and also wholly focused on Roxas, who again, at the time, people didn't like very much. A lot of people like towards when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, like kind of lambasted that opening where you're playing as Roxas in Twilight Town. I think considering all of that, it was still really working for me and still really clicking for me as a Twilight Town fanboy. I love that part of that game. I think it's super important. I found that the game just like really took hold of me. So I played it, didn't finish it in time for that episode, but did end up finishing it a couple months later and really loved it. And like I said, it made my top 10. I think it was number 5 for me or number 4 on the Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
But in my eyes, it is in a place where it is vying for the top spot in terms of like if I had to rank all the Kingdom Hearts games, like it's right up there with Kingdom Hearts 2 for me at this point. I think the two of them are kind of like two planetary objects just kind of in orbit of one another. And it's hard to really point at one and be like, that's my favorite, because they're both spinning. But all of that said, for this episode, you reached out to me. I don't even know when that was, like May that you reached out to me and you were like, hey, do you want to do this? I started playing the game again. It was right around when Delta came out for iPhone, which meant that it was like very easy to emulate DS games on the iPhone. So I started doing that a little bit and was having a good time. Then I moved it over to my Iron Odin, which is like a handheld emulator that I use that runs Android. And playing this game where you are able to remap the controls to like actual controller and like use the right analog stick to move the camera and stuff. It's amazing. It feels so good, and it takes a game that like felt remarkably good on original hardware and kind of just like bumps it up to a whole other level. So I started replaying it. I did not finish it. I made it like maybe halfway in for this episode, because I've done the whole thing before. But what I did do, I messaged you, Chase, last night about this. I decided to watch the movie version that was included in the like bundle, which I have a lot of thoughts about, and I'm sure we'll talk about later. And I also did not tell you about this, but I read the whole manga.
There's a manga.
There's a 5-volume manga, and I read all of it between last night and this recording.
Oh my God.
I crammed it like I was studying for a test. I don't even know how much of it I remember. I'll probably remember more of it tomorrow, if I'm being completely honest. But I did read all of it between then and now.
Is it any good?
Yes, it is very good. And it is super weird. It is super weird because it is somehow more of a comedy than you would expect it to be, considering this game is literally a tragedy. It's a really weird choice to have made. But I think if I was to point at either the movie version or the manga as your way of experiencing this game, if you're not going to actually play it, I would say the manga is the better choice over the movie by like a huge margin.
I didn't even know that this existed.
It's been kind of like at the back of my head for a while. There's a bunch of Kingdom Hearts manga. It's been in the back of my head for a while. Like, I should read those one day. That'd be really funny, right? And then I thought the funniest thing to do would be to just read all of it in one day so I could talk about it here.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's wild.
Yeah, I will be reading this later today, I suspect.
There you go.
Yeah, you got to read the Kingdom Hearts 2 manga before you do that episode.
Yes, I'm sure that one's like the pages are like written upside down and like
it's like House of Leaves.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the thing I was thinking of. Let's see, David, do you want to explain your experience with this one?
Sure. Yeah, I did not play this game when it first came out. Similar to Brendon, I was like just waiting. I was saving myself for Kingdom Hearts 3. I was like, nope, I don't really want to do any of this other stuff. I did mess with Birth by Sleep. I did mess with Dream Drop Distance when it first came out, but more of these ones that seemed like they weren't really Sora based at all, or like main trio of characters based. I kind of just largely ignored. I think also in hindsight, not a good move. Agreed there. Because these games are, since they aren't going for the main story thrust, they can just go into these much more interesting side avenues of different like tangential vibes from the main storyline, which I think is great. But the first time that I experienced this story, I did just watch the movie because we were getting ready for prepping for the Kingdom Hearts 2 episode we're going to do in the future. And I figured, hey, I've never seen this before, so I just watched the whole thing. And it was very effective. I mean, it is, like you said, it is a tragedy. It really just makes Roxas's character so much more interesting and engaging. And makes him feel so much more whole, even though he does not have a heart. And then going and playing it, actually, I was pretty impressed with the game itself from a mechanical standpoint as well. I do think they added just enough gameplay elements to make it pretty interesting for the DS. I feel like the DS is kind of a slept on or forgotten handheld in some ways of like how much power it actually had in it, because I was pretty impressed by just the level design, just how good the graphics looked, and just how decently it did control. You really do get like the full Kingdom Hearts experience on there, even though it does take a little finagling with some of the buttons sometimes to do things correctly. But I was quite impressed with it. It's a fun, different take on the Kingdom Hearts formula because of how they structure the game loop of like trying to collect all these hearts in each level and giving all these different fun side characters to kind of learn about, people who you've seen in the past. It's just your enemies. And now seeing kind of, okay, what actually kind of makes you tick and what is your actual personality besides just villain that you get in Kingdom Hearts 2. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time with this game. I thought it was quite interesting, and the story is probably, you know, going on a limb here, probably one of the better stories in this series, I would say, because it is such like a nice standalone little bit that you get.
Yeah, you get the whole thing. Like, you don't have to play a lot of other games to really get it.
Yeah, I don't have to like watch a stage play or anything like that, or you know, read transcripts online of said stage play. I get the whole thing, which is very refreshing from Kingdom Hearts. Yeah.
I feel like when you and I played the first one, that was like one of the bigger things, is like, wow, it's all here. Like it's
exactly.
There's not a lot of like really superfluous stuff in there. And like the stuff that doesn't totally make sense is it feels purposeful of like, it's supposed to be ethereal and kind of conceptual.
Exactly.
And like, I also love 2. I think 2 is probably the one for me. But like, it definitely has some more of the like, you need to kind of read and try to figure out if you want to like know all of the plot points in this one.
Yeah.
I think it still relies on the same sort of thing of like, you should feel this rather than know it. But they went, you know, hard with the Organization 13 stuff in 2.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot more sense after having played this one.
Absolutely. Yeah. 1 feels like you can tell they weren't sure if this was going to be a game that was going to get a sequel. And they're just like, we're just going to make a nice story and it's going to be very concise and you're going to feel a lot of things. And then once they got the green light, like, hey, this is a big success, they're like, okay, where do we go from here? Right.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about Kingdom Hearts, the first one specifically, is, you know, it's kind of the goof, but it really is an exploration of the quote unquote power of friendship. And a lot of, I think, the Disney worlds that you're visiting are, or at least the bits of the stories that you're experiencing, are just kind of reinforcing that concept over and over again. Kingdom Hearts 2 and this game, I think, do a more interesting job of tying whatever they're trying to explore thematically in the narrative with whatever worlds you're visiting at the time. I think 2 is the most locked in on that, where that's a game about like literally finding yourself in a big way. And a lot of the places that you visit, like, I don't know, Tron, just to pick a weird one, you know, like that's a story about Tron trying to decide if he's going to be a hero or not. Things like that are happening in every single Disney world you visit. And I think that that's a game that really continues to like reinforce itself repeatedly throughout the entirety of that game, and really like sticks the landing at the end when they try and like smash all of it from your head into your heart. This game I don't think is as solid on that front. I think what they're trying to explore specifically is, I think, a more interesting take on what they tried to explore in the first one, right? It's kind of the power of friendship mashed up with trying to find yourself as a person and like who you are and how you exist in the world. And some of the places you visit are about that, and some of them are not. You know, which I guess we'll talk about when we get to the plot synopsis specifically. But I think that even with all of that, this game is so not about the Disney stuff at all. You know, like this game is literally about like the monotony of going to work in a lot of ways. And I think that's one of the reasons that people just straight up didn't like it when it came out. And I think that's a reason that there's still this prevailing sense that this is like the most boring and maybe worst Kingdom Hearts game for a lot of people. And it's funny, if you like look up reactions to this online, if you're just like, you know, crawling through the forums from between 2009 and now, it's really like 3 or 4 years ago that you can start to see people be like, this is actually my favorite one. Like that's the moment where you start to see the turn a little bit. And then, you know, in the past like 2 or 3 years, you start to get all the video essays that are like, you have to play Kingdom Hearts 358 days over 2.
I feel like it is sort of ahead of its time in a weird way. Like the kind of games that are employing boredom or a feeling that is maybe not just straight up fun. Those didn't really, I feel like, get popular until maybe like 2017, 2018. And I'm mostly thinking of Death Stranding, if I'm being real. Like a game where like there are moments where you're kind of just supposed to be slogging through the wilds and like just listening to the music that Hideo Kojima has chosen to put in front of you.
A lot of the like quote unquote walking simulators too, right? Like the Gone Homes or Firewatches of the world. They're not supposed to be, you know, super engaging at all times. That's kind of part of the narrative. I think there's an understanding that you need, you know, peaks and valleys in storytelling.
Yeah.
But I think this game specifically, as you're saying, going almost the more Death Stranding route and being like, we're actually going to be withholding the fun from you. And the stuff that you do find fun, you're going to do so much that it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
Is so important to what this game is trying to accomplish.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons that the movie version is such a bummer because it removes the actual monotony from the game, which is, again, like exactly how they put you in the headspace of what Roxas is experiencing throughout its runtime.
The scenes where they go and eat sea salt ice cream, I am also like, whew, another long day. Let me like get the reward for doing my daily stuff, which is
SSDD. Yep.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, just to kind of explain where I'm at, because I'm pretty similar to where you were at with this, David. I hadn't played this, and I also had the feeling of like, well, this is just a cash grab or something like that. I don't know if my interpretation at the time was quite as negative, but like, I think there were a lot of games from that era, and especially on the GBA, where it's like they were just kind of putting out something to put out something of like this, you know, it's a GBA game for, you know, like, I don't know, a Tony Hawk game or something like that. And it's like, this is clearly not the best version of this to be playing. And so like, I won't. I don't know that or at least in my understanding, like the prevailing thought of like, hey, there might be something good hidden in this kind of side story that they were doing didn't really occur to me until later. And then, mostly in checking this out for this episode was I convinced of there being something really cool here. Because I had also heard that opinion a lot of like, this is not a good one. It's kind of boring. You're just doing the same stuff over and over again.
It wasn't reviewed particularly well, was it?
I don't think so. Yeah. Like, I think some people had good opinions, but it was largely kind of middle of the road of like, it's all right. Like,
2009 Games Media was really focused on breaking games down into their component parts in a big way. And I think the gameplay feeling surprisingly good was the thing that really carried it in a lot of ways. You know, it is as you were saying earlier, like a technical marvel on the DS in a big way.
It is surprising. And like we had played Chain of Memories and then the remake as well that they put out, which is like not amazing. It doesn't feel super good if you're not on the GBA. Yeah. And so like I was half expecting it to be about as good as that as far as combat goes, but like pretty good. Like it feels pretty good. It feels pretty good to fight. And like I don't know, I think, you know, there could be an interpretation of that of like Kingdom Hearts is just smashing a button, but like they make smashing a button feel really good in these games. And
the limit break's like, pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very fun. It's very cool. So like I was happy to see that was here. I think you two kind of said most of the stuff that I have coming to this game of like wasn't expecting a lot of it. I didn't feel like I needed more information about Roxas. I'm so glad that I have more information about Roxas having played this.
Yeah.
It also makes
what you didn't know you wanted.
I didn't know I wanted this, but like it makes two parts of Kingdom Hearts 2 just devastating. One, the intro, the whole intro of 2 just feels like, oh my God, this guy just misses his friends and he doesn't know why. He's like kind of like feeling this like ethereal, like, I don't know, like summer is coming to an end and it's a bummer. And like, why am I sad?
Why is he so obsessed with going to the beach?
Yes. Yeah. Like what is the connection there? And like, why does that make him feel a certain way? And then, I don't think this is kind of a big part of 2, but like the fight that you have with Roxas as Sora in 2 is like amazing. Having played this game, I won't go super far into that in case somebody hasn't played 2, but like, good Lord, that scene is really hits hard once you've played this.
Yeah, I think one of the things also, maybe one of the reasons that I would recommend playing 2 before this specifically is one of the things that is, let's say the reason that Roxas is in Organization 13 is one of the big twists of 2.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say it or should I not say it?
I think you can.
What do we think?
Go for it.
One of the big twists of Kingdom Hearts 2 is that as you've been fighting all the Heartless throughout the series, you are using the Keyblade to release the hearts that have been trapped inside these Heartless, which is actually feeding Kingdom Hearts, which is the big giant heart in the sky, for Ansem and Xemnas, the villains of the video game, who are trying to contain that power and use it for their own malicious purposes.
Yeah.
And that's what makes 358 Days Over 2 so fascinating. Is you have Roxas and Xion, who we'll talk about, as these two Keyblade wielders who are like just punching in and punching out, doing the evil bidding of some real evil people for reasons that they don't even need much convincing on. Like they're just like, oh yeah, this is our job. All right, cool. All right, excited to do a mission. And every once in a while, I get a day off. Yeah. And like that's like the vibe for them.
There's a couple of moments in the game too, which I'm sure I'll bring up, but like Roxas is like, I don't really get what Kingdom Hearts is, and people give him kind of an answer, and he's like, I guess, like,
yes,
he's all of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's so funny.
I do think in that way, this is the one where Nomura gets the closest to making an entry point for people in some ways.
Yes,
Exactly.
I do think that you can play these interchangeably, but I think there is something to be said for joining in with this one. If you say didn't have a PS2, but did have a Nintendo DS, and this was the game that you could play, there is a lot of expository stuff that happens in this game that is both happening via cutscene and also in Roxas's journal that he's keeping, which are all like amazing entries that literally just explain the lore of the world for you. And I have a kind of like what you're saying about if you blur your eyes a bit, Kingdom Hearts makes more sense. I think the more you kind of look at and pick apart the lore of Kingdom Hearts, the more you're like missing the forest in a way. But that said, I do think the idea of having your protagonist being this, not the classic like RPG trope of being an amnesiac, but this person who like definitely does have a past, and that past is very important, but a lot of players are coming into it with the knowledge of what that past is, does allow people to play through this game in a way that does make it feel a little bit like the Titanic. Like you know where it's going to end when it's starting. And I think I don't want to say more about that until we actually talk about the synopsis, but I do think there is this sense, there's this prevailing sense throughout the game that's like, I'm seeing a lot of people who I don't see later. And that's why is that?
Yeah, they're all,
because these are all fun characters.
They're all a Chekhov's gun of like, where do you go?
Where did this person go? Where did they come from? Why is this person missing from the beginning, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't we get into just the plot of this, because I feel like we're kind of poking at the edges of it.
Cool. I would like to.
Cool.
Let's do it.
All right. Starting off, let me just start with Dearly Beloved. God, A, what a good song. B,
Great. Perfect.
It in this one specifically starts about halfway through the actual composition. Like it doesn't start with the normal sort of lead up and intro and everything. It plops you right in the middle, which again, Yoko Shimomura, come on, man. Like she's just out here doing the work of immediately kind of cluing you into the fact that like this is connected to Kingdom Hearts 1, and so is Roxas, and so is Xion. But like it's different, right? Like it's a little bit out of order, and things don't totally make sense of like why it's this way, but you feel it still. Like Dearly Beloved is a very moving piece, and so like you understand that like something is amiss, but hey, this is still familiar and good.
It's a perfect song. And it's gonna fuck me up for the rest of my life.
I know. Yeah. Every time I like listen to it, I'm thinking like this time will be the time it doesn't hit, and every single time
hits every time.
Yeah,
it sure does. Yeah.
Okay, so just like as far as setup goes, the first thing you see as a player is like, I think it starts at like 250 or something. It's kind of far in the future of like day 250 or something like that.
255.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Where it's a scene with Roxas and a boy named Axel, who I guess at this point wouldn't know if you haven't played Kingdom Hearts 2, or you would know him from Chain of Memories if you played that before as well.
Yeah.
But him and Roxas are like hanging out on the top of a big old clock tower, and they're talking about essentially why the sunset is red.
Yep.
And at some point, Roxas is like, oh, I don't know where she is, not really knowing who that is, but referencing that, it cuts to Axel, and he like has a sort of look to him that he might know something more there. And then they kind of like make a little bit of dialogue here about just like what Roxas was like at the very beginning when he started at Organization 13, and then the clock rolls back to day 1, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of explains like how Roxas has like come to be here.
He's the 13th member of Organization 13.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So Roxas shows up. He's being led in by someone. I don't remember who it is, but like he shows up. They're like, hey, here's our 13th member. He's going to start going on missions. And Roxas doesn't remember anything, seemingly.
Yeah.
A big plot point about most of the members of Organization 13 is that they can remember who they were before they became nobodies. Nobodies being a person who has been separated from their heart.
Yes. Yep.
And again, one of the biggest parts of Kingdom Hearts 1, and I think you know this, Brendon, because you've talked about this on other podcasts before, but a part that you probably haven't seen yet in Kingdom Hearts 1 is a moment where Sora, in trying to save Kyrie unlocks his own heart and separates his body from his heart and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
So that has a bunch of repercussions in every one of these games. But the point being that these people who are in Organization 13 are all someone who they had a heart at some point, but that got separated from their body, and their body is the person that is now in Organization 13.
Right.
Notably, Roxas doesn't remember who he is or where he came from, and that like sort of makes him notable among these people.
I think it's worth mentioning that Organization 13 is also filled with notable people, because there are a lot of nobodies. I think they're called Dusks that you see around in Kingdom Hearts 2, which are like the kind of like standard enemy version of a nobody versus like the kind of little scraggly Heartless that you see and you fight a lot in Kingdom Hearts 1. So a nobody is created every time the heart is separated from the body, technically, but you need to have apparently an exceptionally strong will to retain your like bodily being as a nobody as well. And it doesn't happen very often, hence Organization 13 only having 13 members, at least at the beginning of this video game.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and Sora's super important, obviously, which is why there are a bunch of, as you were saying, weird repercussions, and Roxas is super bizarre even in that lineup.
Yeah. Sora's the biggest special boy, and a lot of things happened when he turned into a Heartless.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they immediately put Roxas to work, and I don't know when they reference this, but it's clear, like the first mission you go on, that Roxas is able to use a Keyblade, which is not a thing that anybody else in Organization 13 can do.
Yeah.
And again, you don't find this out immediately, but like you said, Brendon, the thing that Organization 13 is trying to do, and they tell you this in this game, is like, we are trying to send all of these hearts to Kingdom Hearts to build it up to, some of them want to, for themselves, get their heart back to be like complete as a nobody. Yeah. I actually don't remember. I think that's not what Xemnas is trying to do. He's trying to do something else for himself specifically, but that's the story that he's feeding a lot of people of like, we'll all be complete and whole once we finish this, and like that's the point of us being here.
Yeah, that is not actually Xemnas' plan.
Yes,
he is not trying to return their hearts to everybody, which is why I think these members are so expendable to him also.
Yeah, he seemingly is kind of just doesn't really give a shit about these people.
None of them.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, he it's worth mentioning probably the boss that you fight at the end of Kingdom Hearts is the heartless version of Ansem, and Xemnas is Ansem's nobody.
Yes.
Which raises a question, where is the regular Ansem at?
Where is the regular dude, the man himself?
Yes.
Which is...
There's Ansem the wise, Ansem the nobody, Ansem the heartless, and Ansem the regular.
Ansem the guy.
Which, unfortunately, the answer to that is also extremely complicated, as Birth by Sleep will give us eventually.
So unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yep.
There is kind of an answer, and he's around. Definitely. Even in this game. Yeah, so there's this explanation that Roxas starts to get, like we were saying, of like, hey, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Again, you as a player are getting sent out in these missions where it's like pretty simple stuff of like just beat some Heartless or like collect some orbs or whatever. Like it's kind of menial stuff. And Roxas is asking different members of Organization 13, like, what am I doing? Why are we doing it? And some of them are like, well, it's to build Kingdom Hearts. And other ones are like, well, you're releasing hearts. And he asks, I think it's Sykes at some point, the like essentially the second in command to Organization 13 as a whole, like, what are we doing? And he gives him more of an answer, but Roxas is still like, I don't really get it. And he's like, okay, too bad. Like, this is your job. You just have to keep doing it.
Right.
You also start to get introduced to these scenes where you're hanging out with Axel, the red-haired, spiky-haired boy from Chain of Memories, who you will know, and from 2 as well, who is like one of the only people in Organization 13 that seems to like carry themselves with any sort of kindness towards Roxas. Everybody else is like sort of cold towards him, even if they're like more animated or anything like that. They're still fairly like resistant to letting Roxas in any way.
Yeah.
Whereas Axel's like, yeah, let's go hang out, or like, why don't we like split a sea salt ice cream or something on the top of this tower at the end of the day?
Yeah, my assumption is that it's mostly out of envy that everyone else kind of treats him like a jerk in a lot of ways, because he is the only one who can actually further their goal in a major way. Yeah, as the only Keyblade wielder among them. I think it raises some questions as to what other missions the other members of Organization 13 are going on. If they're not fighting Heartless and releasing more hearts to build Kingdom Hearts. Like what are they out doing? Is it all recon? You know, are they all just like searching for areas with like a high Heartless count or something? I don't know. But I do think that that's a large part of what happens here. And I think as you start to get sent out on some missions, there seems to be this idea. This is also multiplayer. It's worth mentioning. Like you could jump, like other people can jump into the game and play as the second person who's there with you. There's this sense that like, let one person beat the crap out of a Heartless, and then Roxas will like do the last hit to release the heart into the wild, and like that's kind of the like operational procedure that you're on over and over and over again.
Yeah, you're right that it does seem like there's a little bit of resentment towards like, well, he's the special boy, and like, but he's also the newest member, and so there's a little bit of like, I don't know, anger of like, come on, man, like, this is the guy who's the only person who's effective at all. There's also like, I think in 2 you get the sense that Organization 13 is like this shadowy organization that knows everything, and they're very like intentional with their actions, and in this one it just kind of feels like they're like, I don't know, let's just go look in Agrabah to see if there's like Heartless out there that we can find or something. And they feel like much more bumbling than they do in the other games.
I enjoy the look behind the curtain of Organization 13.
Yes. Yeah. That these are just like people trying to figure it out.
I think it's one of the more interesting aspects of actually playing the game versus just watching the movie version as well, is so much of the dialogue is actually delivered via running around. I can't believe they call it this, but the area where you like get your missions is called the gray area. Unbelievable. Like such an on the nose way of naming that place. But anyway, as you run around the gray area, you get to have conversations with the organization members who are like not going on missions that day and are just kind of hanging out. And so much characterization is delivered through that stuff. And that's all stuff that you don't get in the movie, which is like a huge bummer. But I do think it's super important to paint these people as people. Because whenever you run into the Masora, as you were both saying, it's always just like, I'm the boss for this level. Let's fight. I have a guitar this time. Isn't that weird?
It's funny that Sora also treats it like that. Like it's weirdly, it feels like when you play any of the other games, it characterizes Sora as just like not giving a single shit about what's going on in the wider plot. He's just like,
he's Goku.
He's Goku. He's like, there's the boss. I'm gonna whip ass. And
Donald
like, that's
and Goofy
the thing
tell him, point him towards an object, and he says, "All right, I'm about to beat the hell out of this thing. Let's go."
I think it's fascinating too, because the World That Never Was castle fights throughout Kingdom Hearts 2, or the end of that, such an emotionally huge buildup as you continue to make your way through those fights and just continually fight those members of Organization 13. And it like feels so good playing as Sora to take them out one by one, because those fights get increasingly more difficult. And I remember that being such a high point and such like a almost badge of honor that I felt when I finished all of those fights in a row and was like, oh my God, I am so good at this game. Like I am feeling great. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to reunite Sora with his friends. This is all going to be worth it. And now in retrospect, I'm like, shit, I'm the bad guy. So like these were all just people who just wanted to be whole. That's so sad.
It's
so
like
sad.
Shadow of the Colossus-esque of like not knowing why you've beaten all these people, and then after the fact being like, oh man, like I should have not done that. I think
I just beat up 13 abused people. Abused
people who are just looking for their
people.
thing.
That's such a bummer.
And like some of them are definitely more like menacing than others, you know, like Sykes and Zemnis are like cartoonishly evil characters. Like they're both like, we're going to beat people up and do the thing that we want to do because we're bad. Whereas like, I think most of the other Organization 13 members are like maybe maniacal, but like chaotic evil at the very worst. Like just like, I'm going to do bad stuff, but like, who cares? Like, I don't
Some of them are evil. Yeah. Some of them are evil, but they're mostly pretty chill.
Yeah. That like maybe if just given a different opportunity or like a different angle on it, they might be like, okay, I'll not hang with these people or something. It's just like Organization 13 is the people that gave them a chance to like be or have a home, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's what makes Axel so interesting, right? Is Axel immediately sees this opportunity in Roxas. You know, he is just assigned to Roxas at the beginning, because Axel, to be clear, he is an assassin. Like that is his role amongst Organization 13. Some of them are straight up just recon people. Some of them are good at other things. Was like Vexen is like their scientist. But Axel is an assassin, and he is assigned to just accompany Roxas when he is basically like a comatose zombie kind of walking around, not saying anything and just kind of like ingesting the world until he can speak and be a person again. And it's not too long after that until Axel just kind of like clicks into this place of, this person could actually be my friend. I can like kind of form them into whatever I want them to be, and I'm going to make that person my friend because I need some companionship. I think one of the things about the nobodies in Organization 13 scene that's also worth mentioning is that they don't feel emotions. That's a thing that they bring up a lot in this game. They don't feel anything. What they do feel or what they express are essentially facsimiles of the memories they had from when they were real people, because they can all remember who they were beforehand. So when they're angry or sad or whatever, they're essentially like acting the way they think they should be acting in those moments, which has a whole bunch of other implications when you ask when you start thinking about Roxas.
I like, my feeling is that the nobodies have convinced themselves that they can't feel anything, and like that is maybe like a method of control that like Xemnas is trying to convince them, like, you will actually feel things once you're reunited with your heart. Because like Roxas cries in this game, and Axel gets very angry pretty regularly about the things that are going on, and so I'm like, you got something going on in there. Like, it's not just this totally closed off person.
Sayix also, right? Like Sayix is an extremely mean person who seems to have kind of a penchant for vengeance, which I would say is a bubbling up of a bunch of emotions. I think, you know, the reason that Roxas cries and why he has emotions, I think is, you know, part and parcel with what the game is trying to explore in terms of like his connection to Sora, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Axel is the weird outlier here. Like, I think Axel is proof, to your point, that it is maybe possible that they are all feeling things, and Xemnas is just telling them that they're not. Like that those aren't real emotions. That's just stuff that's based on memory. Yeah. But Roxas definitely is feeling real stuff.
You also get the other side of this. We'll get to Diz in a bit, but like Diz is a person who really reinforces the idea that they can't feel anything. Like, it's not possible for them to feel something. And I think there are a lot of characters who have proven that point that maybe they can. And I think Namine, who we'll get to as well, also sort of is like, she's convinced that these people are feeling something or experiencing something. And she is like, I don't know if I totally agree with that. And again, I think a lot of it is just a means of control, or at least distancing yourself from these people. Like Diz and
distancing?
Diz. Jesus. I'm going to stop recording. Diz is like, it seems like he's distancing himself from these people because he like sort of wants them to be his enemy still, and doesn't want to allow in the fact that maybe these are people that like deserve a second look or something like that.
Yeah, it's shame. He's feeling shame. Is what he's feeling. Yeah, because he is not entirely responsible for the creation of nobodies and Heartless in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we had mentioned that this game is kind of taking place at the same time as Chain of Memories, and at some point you get like pretty hard confirmation of that, where Roxas has been going on all these missions with Axel and is like essentially a friend of his at this point, where they've been going, they eat sea salt ice cream like every day after their missions, and at some point like Axel's kind of casually is like, hey, I won't see you for a little while, I gotta go to Castle Oblivion with a bunch of other people from Organization 13, we have a mission there, and is like very cagey about it, like doesn't say a lot. Roxas is like, hey, that sucks, like why is my friend going away? But is again given very little information about it. And eventually, like one of these days, like a bunch of people are just not there. Like Axel's not there. A bunch of the other members who, spoilers for Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, will eventually die at Castle Oblivion.
Yep.
They are also not there. And so there's this kind of like distance that Roxas suddenly feels of like, where's all the people that I like care about? It's just me and Sykes, who like sucks. I don't like being around him. He's always mean to me. This is also where Xion shows up as well, though, who they introduce her kind of in a, you see the similarities, at least, is like how she's introduced, like the camera framing and stuff of, she also seems to not remember much about herself. She's very like quiet when she gets there. And they're like, hey, it's Xion. She's the 14th member of Organization 13.
Makes no sense.
She's going to be here too. So get used to that.
I like that the other members ask about that. Like, are we going to change our name? And they're like, I don't know.
13's cool.
Actually, I don't remember if that was in the movie or the manga now that I'm thinking about it, but it definitely happened in one of them.
One source of canon has referenced this at some point.
Yes. It's all blending together to me now, which is definitely problematic for this episode.
I think that's the perfect Kingdom Hearts experience. It should blend together. You shouldn't be able to distinguish which game is which.
One experience.
You're probably right.
So I think you go on a few missions with Xion, and she's like still very closed off and like doesn't talk a lot. She usually has her hood up, so you can't really see her face.
Yeah.
But you discover that she can also use the Keyblade, which is like a pretty, again, big deal, again, because there's nobody else in the organization that can. And so it's like, oh, wild. We have another person here who can do this.
Yeah.
And Roxas also kind of takes a shine to her. And I think he's just kind of passing on like the kindness that Axel has done to him.
Yeah.
First,
Exactly.
he's like, hey, you should come hang out. Like after we like finish our mission, like we go up and do this thing.
Yeah.
Which is just like so cute and nice. It's like when you see like, I don't know, like a toddler holding a baby or something like that, where you're like, they get it. Like they just went through this and they're kind of passing on that kindness that was done to them.
Yeah.
It's really nice. And he like Roxas clearly maybe doesn't know why people do that, but he's like, hey, this felt good for me. So like, I should do this for you too.
Yeah, barely understands anything, but understands that that is a nice thing to do.
Yes, yeah. And like she's new, she's probably scared, so like I should do it for her.
And I think this also, continues to portray the idea that nobodies don't have emotions.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Like
especially in the case of Roxas and increasingly in the case of Xion, because you can tell that she is happy to be there.
yeah, she eventually starts like talking, which is not a thing that she was doing initially, of like kind of opening up and asking questions of like why do people do this? Or like you say you're like friends with Axel, like what's a friend? I don't know what that is.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, there's this moment where Roxas falls into a coma while I think this is still while Axel is gone. And you find out eventually that this is because like Sora's memories are getting all jacked up in Chain of Memories. Like he's currently going through Castle Oblivion, like concurrently with Roxas, like doing these missions. And so when his memories get all jumbled, like that has an effect on Roxas. And so he like is asleep for a few weeks. Two things about this. One, Xion like clearly is like disturbed by this and starts leaving like seashells next to his bed while he is like in a coma, which means so many things. Like they had talked about it a little bit of like, hey, hold this up to your ear and like you'll hear the ocean. And on the bottom screen of the DS, you get these like superimposed images of events from Kingdom Hearts 1 happening. And so like there's some connection that's happening between Roxas and Xion where they're both kind of like, what is this? Like, what is this feeling I have? And why am I drawn to these objects and these places? But
this is another thing that the game itself does a better job of than the movie version, where the scenes are happening concurrently on the top and bottom screens of the DS instead of in the movie. They sometimes just omit that entirely. Like they'll omit the kind of like fuzzy, here's the version of Sora's life that you're seeing. Sometimes they do cut it in, which I'm thankful that they do.
Yeah.
But having both the scenes playing simultaneously, I think is such a great use of the DS, which like it's such a weird piece of hardware, and it's one of the reasons that we love doing the episode about it so much. Is just like seeing how people use that hardware to just explore some ideas that will literally and can never be explored again. And I think this idea of using it to tell two narratives simultaneously is so cool. It's such a cool use of it. Yeah,
usually the DS, when a game is quote unquote designed for it, is designed mechanically for something that like you have the map on the bottom that you can interact with and the other stuff on the top. Whereas like, designing it for narrative is such a wild swing that they're like, we're going to show you both Sora and Roxas like moving in the same direction at the same time to kind of like connect that maybe he's feeling this like echo of Sora in a way.
It's brilliant.
It's really good. The other thing I was going to bring up about this like coma stuff is that like, not to bury the lead here, the game feels like it is just simply about having a job and being depressed sometimes. Like that that is a thing that you're supposed to feel. And these scenes where either one of Xion, she also at some point experiences a coma, or Roxas, like, God, does that hit hard if you're like seeing that experience of having depression where like you just lose weeks sometimes and look back and like, what did I do for the last 14 days? Like what even happened there?
Totally.
And like Roxas is literally in a coma. He doesn't wake up, but I think it's speaking to the feeling of just like, the days scrolling by and being like 20 days in the future and being like, what did I miss? Like I haven't been here for a little while.
Yeah. This I think is one of the larger things that drew me to this game initially when I played it for the episode. Is just, it was within maybe the first 20 or 30 minutes. I was like, oh, this is a game about depression. This is like watching Evangelion. Like this is, this is the teenage angst kind of experience all, compacted into a video game. And I think that's another piece of the game that really speaks to why the monotony of the gameplay starts to work in that way, where it's like, you just feel so trapped in that mission structure. And you are so at the whims of other people, and you start to ask these questions about like, okay, what am I for?
Yeah.
If if my being and my will is being dictated by others, in this case, like this guy who's an asshole specifically, you know, when do I get to carve out who I am? And the difficulty of doing that is so great that in this game for Roxas, and also in real life for other people who have experienced depression in a major way, it's such an overwhelming task that conjuring up the willpower to even try and accomplish it is almost not possible.
Yeah.
And the only thing you can really do is lie in bed and have somebody else surround your body with seashells.
Yeah. Have somebody just like, kind of like be around until you're able to kind of like express yourself and be awake again. God, what a good game. I feel like there are a lot of games that, and I think more recently you see this in kind of the indie scene of games that are like about depression. Like the content of the game is about that. And I think a lot of them are about it more directly. Like Omori or something like that is like definitely about depression. And I think it is about that on its face, right? Like the game, the actions that you're doing are not that distanced from the actual experience of dealing with depression. But I think that like just one layer removed from that, like in this game, I think you feel it still, you still get it. And there's kind of a power in not directly addressing it. It's kind of sneaky sometimes that like you'll be a couple hours into the game and be like, oh my God, why did that hit so hard? Like why do I feel so many things about this game all of a sudden?
I think that's the thing for me with Nomura's work in general is he is always able to hide whatever emotionally resonant thing he's trying to express so many layers beneath like weird lore that you can't really make sense of. It ends up, you know, kind of bubbling its way to the surface for you regardless. Like it's almost happening subconsciously. It's happening like within you. Like you're sitting here trying to piece together what a nobody is. And then suddenly a scene happens and you're like, why am I crying in my basement? And I think for me in particular, to get real, like I was a person who was experiencing depression a lot as a kid and growing up, didn't have the words for it and didn't understand it and wasn't diagnosed until I was like around 19 or 20. You know, as soon as that happened, as soon as I like went to a therapist and they were like, hello, clinically, this is what you have. You know, that was the moment where it was like, oh my God, so much stuff in my life makes sense now in retrospect. But at the time playing Kingdom Hearts 2 specifically, which I think is also kind of going around or at least touching on some of these themes specifically, I think that's really in retrospect the reason that game hit me as hard as it did. It was like, this is all stuff that I was experiencing and I didn't really have like the vocabulary to express or even understand in a lot of ways. But here was this game that was subconsciously kind of beaming into my head like, hello, you are the target market. You are the target audience for this. This story is written for you, which is why when I play games like this, or when I watched Neon Genesis Evangelion for the first time a couple of years ago, all in one sitting, it's like I end up walking away being like, honestly being like Roxas at the beginning of this game for like a couple days afterwards, because it like is almost transportive into that place that I was at where I didn't understand what was going on. But also, like, as an adult now, looking back, I think it only makes both that chapter of my life, but also what this game is trying to express all the more powerful for me. You know, it I think just kind of like colors in a page that I didn't even realize had lines to be colored in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yes, I mean, same thing. I think that's why I had the same experience with 2 and 1 and a lot of the games. Even The World Ends With You, I played that at the time, and that also kind of spoke to a similar thing with Neku in that game just being like totally closed off as like a self-defense mechanism. Yeah. That, again, the game isn't saying like, yeah, they're depressed or anything like that. They never, ever say that, but it speaks to that experience so acutely that it's kind of unbelievable. And like, again, playing this as an adult, like, honestly, if I had played this game when I was 15 or something, it still would have hit, I'm sure. But like the having a job thing is just like unbelievably resonant of like, I am also tired at the end of the day. And sometimes the best thing I can do for myself is like, just go hang out with people and like, try to think about something else or like distract myself with sea salt ice cream or something.
There you go.
Totally. It's a great game.
Really, really good.
It's funny. I'm sitting here, I'm messing with pin for Gekukan Primary High School, which is the high school from Persona 3.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Which is a game I just finished recently, and very similar experience where there's also a game that is like not on its face being like, this is a game about depression, but it sure is. And that game in this game, this is actually, I would say, the closest Kingdom Hearts ever gets to being a Persona-like in some ways. You know, those games are so based around the calendar system and so based around this idea of like, you wake up in the morning and you need to decide what you're going to do with your life. This game, I think, you know, makes some interesting shifts on that by taking that choice away from you in a big way. You know, it's like, yeah, you have a choice of missions sometimes, but what does that mean if it's the same 6 activities you're going to be doing over and over again?
It's at the periphery that you get to make any of the decisions. Like the stuff that you have to do that day is already decided for you.
I do think if they were ever to actually do a full-scale remake of this game in some way, shape, or form, I would be shocked if they didn't futz around with it a little bit to make it a little more like Persona. I feel like that's such like a natural in some ways.
I mean, I would play it. That sounds good.
I would play that too.
So jumping ahead just a little, Roxas gets information, I think from Sykes, that like, hey, nobody survived Castle Oblivion. Like everybody died, including Axel. Like definitely Axel died too. A little bit of dramatic irony here if you've played Chain of Memories, that like Axel's the only person who survived and like was kind of sent there to maybe suss out like, are these people with us or not? Again, playing Chain of Memories, it seems like Axel's the one who's like playing both sides, and I think he kind of is, because there's definitely moments where he like lets Nominate get away and is like, yeah, we couldn't find her, I don't know where she is, but is also definitely like culling the herd a little bit of, you know, if somebody goes against the organization, he's like, oh well, time to get, you know, offed. And so he comes back eventually, but Roxas is initially like, well, I guess Axel's gone, and that's just the deal. So anyway, there's a lot more of just like in the movie version of the game, it's a lot of stills of Roxas beating up Heartless, and he's like, Roxas went along with his day, and like that's it.
Yes.
Many Heartless. Yes.
Yeah.
Continued going.
Yeah. I think the next kind of major plot beat is that Xion eventually loses the ability to use the Keyblade. Like she can't conjure it in the way that like Roxas can and she could before that. And Roxas and I think Axel as well are like very worried that like this is going to make her unusable to the organization, that she'll get turned into a dusk. Like they're like, we can't let that happen. And so Roxas just says like, okay, well, I'll go with you on like all of our missions and I'll just do double duty. Like, well, I'll fight all the Heartless for you.
Yeah.
Cause she can still fight, but she can't actually like release the hearts from the Heartless. And that works for a little while, but then I think Sykes kind of like catches on to what's happening here. And like essentially is like, no, like you can't go on missions with her anymore. Eventually she like can't. And then, you know, they start being like, well, like what's her point here? Why is she even around anymore? Eventually Axel kind of like pulls some strings and is like, hey, Roxas and Xion like need to go on a mission together today. And I think it's at like, that's at the Beast's castle or something like that. We haven't talked about the Disney stuff of it all at all, but like, again, that's kind of the least important thing about this game. But she eventually is able to kind of like regain the ability to do it. And I think it's in a moment where Roxas is like deeply in danger that she's able to conjure it again and like figure out like, oh, I can do this.
This is the mission, I think, where Roxas picks up a stick, right? And he's using a stick and he gives Xion his Keyblade for a bit.
I think so, yeah.
And it's like, if you can't conjure yours, then you can use mine. And then you, as Roxas, like you have this stick that does no damage and you can like do magic from the background and like heal Xion, and like that's kind of it. Which I think, honestly, you know, again, just hammering home the thing that this game is trying to hammer home, this idea of like what friendship means as an idea, you know, because Kingdom Hearts 1 is so loosey-goosey about it. You know, it's like, yeah, he cares a lot about his friends. And that's a resonant feeling. I'm not saying that that's not like a thing that's worth building a whole video game around, but they don't do a lot of digging really there. There's no real depth to it outside of like, those are his friends and he just wants to be with them again.
Yeah.
This is a game that is obsessed with showing you what friendship means over and over again. And it can mean, you know, sea salt ice cream, which I think for Roxas ends up being literally the definition for him. He's just like, this is what friends do. They eat ice cream together and that's pretty much it. But it's actually in the moments like this where he is being the best possible friend to somebody in supporting them in a way that I think is protecting them in the time when they need it the most, you know?
Yeah.
And with the understanding that there's a world in which Xion will never repay that and she doesn't need to, and that's not even a thought that crosses his mind, you know? Even though this is like technically maybe even him repaying her for putting seashells around his bed and hanging out with him while he was in a coma for a while. The impulse is like, I'm just going to help this person as much as I possibly can because I care about them, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah.
Really nice.
It's you're covering for somebody who like can't do something that moment, you know?
But on the flip side, this is also one of the Disney worlds that like does not at all reflect what they're trying to do with the game. Because I think if I recall correctly, it's literally just like Belle is in danger. There's a big Heartless in the ballroom that wants to fight and you need to save Belle. And I think it's after you beat the Heartless that Beast shows up.
I think
and is like, what happened? And like, that's the whole scene. It's deeply silly. So you get hits and misses here. But some of the other ones, I think, they do a better job.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's after this mission, I kind of wanted to highlight one of these scenes because like you're getting a bunch of sea salt ice cream scenes at the end of these, but this one was just bananas, and I think speaks to the tragedy of Roxas a lot and like where this game goes eventually. But after the mission, he says, "I hope we can always be just like this forever. I want these days to last forever.
Hanging out, the ice cream, the sunsets."
Well, nothing lasts forever, you know. Least of all for a bunch of nobodies like us. But it's okay if things change and we can't meet up here.
Huh?
As long as we keep each other in our thoughts, none of us will ever have to be apart. Got it memorized?
Wow, that was so not you.
Hey!
Which, man, is nice and cool, and also why the end of this game is so sad. That a lot of these people eventually can't be together, but there's a reason at some point why they literally can't be in each other's minds either, which is just like so brutal.
Mm-hmm. So much of this game, if you have played Kingdom Hearts 2, it's just like having scenes like this happen and just be like, ugh, over and over and over again. I think like one of the best ones is the one where Axel introduces the idea of what a best friend is. It's like, yeah, you're my friends, but I don't know if I have a best friend, which feels like very like fourth grade in some ways.
Yeah.
Because he just doesn't want to admit that Roxas is his best friend at this point.
Yeah.
And then does later. But, it's just moments like that over and over again that just continue to like shoot arrows directly into your heart.
Yeah. Because I mean, like even in the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2, one of the earlier things that happens, it's like right towards the end of Roxas's story in the beginning, is that like Axel shows up and you don't know this at the time, but he's like, "Oh, you don't remember me? Like you're just like somebody else now." That like, that's nonsense. I'm going to have to like beat you up so that like you remember who I am.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then you're like, who's this like guy who's being so mean to Roxas? But like, it's so sad with the context of this game of like, this guy lost his literal best friend. And like Xion's, spoilers for the rest of this game, Xion's not around anymore.
Yeah.
Nope.
But like, can you imagine the devastation of somebody that you've like, has been your main person that you have connected with over the course of like a year being like, who are you? I don't know who you are. Like, God, it's so sad for Axel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He really gets the rough end here.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah.
There is I think this is around like day 150, but Roxas goes to, I think it's Agrabah, and like somebody there is talking about they can't bear to lose somebody else. Like I think it's Aladdin or something is talking to Genie, who knows. But Roxas eventually talks to Axel again and is like, I don't know if I have something like that. I don't know if I like have something that I couldn't bear to lose. And then eventually comes to the conclusion like, well, I would be pretty sad if I lost you or Xion. Like that's a thing that would bum me out. Again, speaking to this idea that they're programmed to think like, I don't have any of that. I'm not a person who can experience emotion, but then immediately follows it up with the contradiction of like, well, you're like that to me. Again, just so devastating in so many ways.
Yeah. And this is one of the Disney worlds that I think does do a very good job of illustrating what's going on thematically, because the whole conceit of this one is that it takes place like right after the events of the movie Aladdin. Mm-hmm. So you're in a space where Genie has just been freed recently. Yeah. And Aladdin and Jasmine are kind of on this journey together to try and just like make Agrabah a better place. And at the same time, there are all these sandstorms that have been whipping through and just like covering so much of Agrabah in a bunch of sand. And there's a point where I think it's Roxas and Xion go out and they fight the big Heartless that's causing all the sandstorms. And Genie shows up and like helps out. That's where you start to like learn a bunch about Genie. And Genie starts to really hammer home this idea of like what a best friend is. Yeah. And is like, I should really go see Aladdin and Jasmine and see how they're holding up. And when you go back to Agrabah with Genie, with all the sand everywhere, and Genie can see that Aladdin and Jasmine are like literally sweeping it up themselves, like for the whole city, like by themselves. Yeah. He's like, oh, I can fix this immediately. Yeah. I'm gonna like magic this. And like as he's getting ready to do that, you can overhear Aladdin being like, I don't think I want Genie to show up and help in this case. Like he doesn't know the Genie's there. He's like, I think that we need to do this ourselves. We spent so much time helping him be free, the last thing I want him to do is to use his magic to help me again.
Yeah.
I need to figure this out for myself. I need to like grow and like be my own person, essentially, is what he's saying here. And Genie is like, wow, that's a really beautiful thing. And then he snaps his fingers and makes all the sand go away anyway, which I think it's like, I love that from a bunch of different perspectives. I think it's wonderful that Genie is able to hear that and then accept that and be like, yeah, but also fuck that. I'm going to help him out.
Yeah.
Like, I think that that's really like as his friend, I'm going to do it for him. And I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it because he's asked me to, and I'm not doing it because of any other reason except that like he is my friend and I want to help him out.
Yeah.
And that is his will. Like he is free and it is his will to do that. And that is what he wants to be doing. And I think that's really powerful in that regard in particular. And then also from the Aladdin perspective, his understanding that like this is an extremely important thing for Genie to understand what it means to be free after all of this time. And I just want him to like go off and be himself and live his best life. Those back and forths, I think, between the two of them speak to a lot of what's going on with Roxas and Xion specifically. I think Xion more so than Roxas in a lot of ways is asking a lot of questions about like, do I have any say in what I'm doing on a daily basis? Like, do I just need to be going on these missions over and over and over again? What does my life look like without the organization? They clearly brought me in and I'm important to them for some reason. And I can wield this Keyblade and whatever. But like, I don't really want to be doing this. She's the one who I think is asking that question more so than anyone else. And we'll see that same push and pull between Aladdin and Genie later in the game with Roxas and Xion kind of pushing back and forth and like helping each other, but also trying to acknowledge what the other person wants in some ways.
Totally. It's one of the few Disney places that like has a more interesting story that has built on the existing story that already exists there. I feel like Kingdom Hearts very commonly is just like, we're just going to do the movie again. Like that's the thing we're going to do here. But like messing around with like what happens after they have like saved the city, that's good. That's interesting. I like that. That it's totally. It's like not just happily ever after. It's like now we have to like, how do we make this a home for people still?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
So I think there is this creeping sensation for Xion that like something bizarre is happening with her like memory and her experience of like being alive. She keeps saying that like, I have this memory of like watching sunsets with someone else. And like, I get the same feeling whenever I go to the ocean. She's been going there to pick up these seashells and stuff like that. And so they have some access to, not Outset Island. What is the island?
Destiny Island.
Destiny Island. Yeah. She has some access to that and is like clearly maybe even going there. And
she is. As confirmed by the manga.
Hell yeah. There you go. Nice. And she's like struggling with something, but I think Roxas and Axel don't totally know what that is. Axel has a little bit more information, but like I think Roxas is just like, I don't know, she's bummed out. I'm bummed out too. Like it's okay. But eventually she goes on this mission and she is tasked with eliminating, I think they call him the traitor or something like that. Like somebody who has been kind of like sneaking around wearing one of the Organization 13 hoods.
The imposter.
Yes, exactly. And she doesn't do it. Like she fails. And you like throughout the course of the game get these kind of like scenes where it's showing you a little bit more of what happened, a little bit more. And eventually like you do realize that this is Riku from after Chain of Memories. A bigger plot beat in Chain of Memories is that like Riku is still fighting sort of the echo of Ansem that took hold of him in the first one. And whenever he kind of like lets himself go completely, that like Ansem takes over and is like extremely powerful, but also like very dangerous. And so he's got sort of this modified look and he's also wearing a fucking blindfold over his eyes, was just like so sick and so cool.
Very near.
Yeah.
Extremely near Automata, yeah.
And also like weirdly plot important in a way that I wasn't anticipating before I started playing this. Like I remember seeing that design for Riku, I think from the secret scene at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1.
Yeah, it might have been in there, yeah.
Or maybe it's a secret scene at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2. I forget, but like one of the the Kingdom Hearts 2 one is the Keyblade War. Now that I'm thinking about it, which you get in Birth by Sleep.
Yeah,
I think it's Kingdom Hearts 1. The secret scene is the Riku with the blindfold fighting somebody who we'll get to. But anyway, I was not anticipating the blindfold to be plot important in any way, shape, or form. I thought it was literally just like, he looks cool, right?
Looks cool as hell, yeah. Which he does.
'Cause he does,
But there is a reason. So yeah, like she fails to beat him and is like kind of just around for a little while, not really talkative and kind of distant towards Axel and Roxas. And eventually also falls into a coma here, which is a point where Roxas in turn starts to leave shells on her bed, just being like, you know, this worked for me, so maybe it'll work for you. Mm-hmm. At this point, you get these conversations between Sykes and Axel, where Axel is clearly covering for Xion. Like, Sykes is like, we should kick her out. She doesn't deserve to be here. He starts calling her it as well, which is like really like cruel in a way. I think at some point you kind of start getting the feeling that he's calling her it and starts calling her like a puppet and stuff like that, which is, again, something that happened in Chain of Memories when they made the kind of fake version of Riku, is that they called that person a puppet as well. And there was all these conversations. Eventually he gets like killed by Riku himself, I think. There's this conversation that he starts having, which I think is kind of paid off in this game, of like, hey, we have the same memories, but like, am I a different person than you are? Like, what if I want the same stuff? And Riku in that game is like, maybe, but I think that when we both like die and go to another place, we're going to go to the same place, you and I.
I don't think that's a good answer, personally.
Not really, but like, what a wild thing to draw out of the ether of his own brain there. Yeah, wild. So like, there's this kind of building feeling that like maybe Xion is one of these puppets that they have made before. Yeah. And the main feeling that Sykes has is like, we need to not have her here. Like, she's just kind of a risk and like not worth it, and she's not like working correctly. Again, starting to get these like flashbacks from Kingdom Hearts 1 where Sora unlocked his own heart to save Kairi. Like, you're getting that quite a bit in these kind of like overlays that the game is showing you. You're also getting these scenes from Naminé, who was from in Chain of Memories, which like, if you don't know who she is at this point, please listen to the Chain of Memories episode, because there's so much shit with her that is like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain in this moment, but
critical character.
Yeah, incredibly important and critical. She knows about Xion, Roxas, and Axel. Like, she's been making these drawings of the three of them, so is like somehow aware of it. And at this point in the story, she is trying to like reconnect the chain of memories of Sora's memories to like put him back together. She's also talking to this bandaged character in red who we know is Diz, and is kind of expressing some amount of like, hey, the memory restoration isn't working, like something is in the way and I don't really know what it is yet.
I think one of the harder things to grok about this game is that so many of the characters are also dealing with incomplete information.
Yes, yeah.
There are a lot of instances in which there are characters like Diz, for example, like trying to explain things that when Diz says something, you're inclined to be like, this is a reliable narrator. I can trust that what he is saying is also the plot of the video game. Yeah. And in a lot of cases, it's not true.
Yeah.
So you're getting bombarded with all this stuff, and it's on you to piece it all together towards the end of it, which I think is just another reason that this entire franchise is just burdened with this idea that it's like imperceptible.
Yeah.
They're just being a little cheeky.
A little cagey about it. Yeah.
Especially when you make his voice actor Christopher Lee.
I was just gonna bring up, Christopher Lee is such a pull here for the voice actor of Diz.
Yeah.
You're not gonna think that he's lying with that voice.
No. Yeah, he seems totally trustworthy.
In command.
At some point, Xion is like convinced that something, like the key to her identity is in Castle Oblivion. And like, I don't know if she has a mission there or if she sneaks off to go there, but she goes there and eventually kind of figures out that she is a replica, like a puppet essentially. And that the point of her existence is that she was like created as a way to like siphon off Sora's memories, as a way to kind of get in the way of the work that Naminé's doing. That like, if they can prevent Sora from coming back, like they won't have an enemy and they'll be able to like control the Keyblade wielders and do their whole Kingdom Hearts thing.
Right.
And so she was just kind of a backup plan, especially a backup plan if Roxas didn't work out.
Yeah.
Like if he somehow fell or like didn't want to work for Organization 13 anymore, that like, well, she's this like replica and more easily controllable.
And I don't think, I mean, I'm not going to read into it too much, but there is an almost like environmental collapse read of this also, where they consider the resource they're using, which is Sora's memories, to build this replica to be an infinite resource that they can continue to tap into, not realizing that like the more of that they do, the more it starts to obviously drain and kill Sora, so that would eventually not work for them.
Yeah.
But B, because they chose Sora of all people, who is the protagonist, I don't know how they didn't know that, they're continuing to make these nobodies that can feel things and feel them very intensely. Yeah. And in no way at all be this like restrainable, controllable object, which is just not good planning.
No. Yeah.
Incomplete science from Vexen.
Yeah. She's got a Drill Baby Drills bumper sticker for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Keep getting those sweet, sweet memories.
They're infinite. They'll never run out. This will never be a problem for us. So I think at this point, Xion like kind of disappears for a little while. Like she doesn't come back to the world that never was. Like she just is not around. And she starts encountering Riku a little bit more frequently, who there is like clearly animosity between these two people. But like, I think she's trying to like, there's a part of her that wants to hear him out. You get eventually more of that scene where she lost the first time, where he's like very kind of cruel to her in a way of like, you should just give back the memories and like go away, essentially. Like he's trying to defend Sora and like, you know, get his friend back. But at the same time, I think there's a part of Riku that's like, I can't just outright kill her. It's not a thing that's like possible for me, but it's still all the while very cruel towards Xion.
Yeah, she has a rough go of it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna withhold my thoughts about that until towards the end. I think actually
at some point, Naminé says to Diz like, I think that I can't put his memories back together the correct way, and really the only way to fix this is to make Xion and Roxas go away, as she says, which is just like very callous and cruel. But I think she also recognizes like, this is a last resort. I don't want to do this, because like she has insight into these people and their experiences, and like has, I think, drawn them eating sea salt ice cream. And so like she knows the relationship that the three of them have together, and probably recognizes like what kind of devastation would be wrought if she chooses to go ahead with this, but is also like, I can't fix Sora unless this happens. At some point, Roxas and Axel both go to Castle Oblivion. Roxas gets a very bad headache and is like, what is happening in here? But he is looking for Xion. And so like, it's very much like, we have to keep going. I have to go through here. But Axel like puts him into the like, what is it? The gateways between or something like that. There's a word for the like door that they go through.
Oh shit. I forget it also.
The lanes between? Is that a thing?
I know they use like the shadow portals or something like that to get around.
It's whatever those are called.
Yeah.
That like only Organization
the pathways
13
between
people
worlds.
Essentially.
Yeah.
The corridors of darkness.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry. Corridors of darkness.
As it turns out.
Yeah. So he takes him back to Twilight Town, and he's like, you know, you just passed out. Rox is like, I don't know what happened. Like, why are we here? He's like, you passed out. I had to get you out of there. But they also encounter Xion here and like try to subdue her in a fight. And there's like clearly some animosity here. She doesn't like maybe trust them completely. And eventually Axel does the very cool anime thing of like going under a blow that she's about to do and like just kind of hitting her in the back of the neck, and then catches her.
Yeah.
Sorry, kid.
Yeah, nothing personal. Yeah, so she gets back for a little while, and this is also the moment where Roxas is seemingly starting to get weaker as Xion gets stronger. That like he goes through these missions and is like, I'm at like half power. I get so exhausted so easily, where she's like getting much stronger as this happens. And I think she sees this, like she has a little bit more insight into like what's going on. And Axel also has a conversation with Sykes where like, I think Sykes says like, I didn't expect you to choose her when he brought her back. And there's kind of this like building sense that like both of them can't exist. Like one of them is going to have to not be here at some point for either of them to exist. Xion also seems to be like speaking to Riku somehow in this like kind of like dream state or something, where she'll stare up at Kingdom Hearts and be like, what do I do, Riku? And then they kind of like, I don't know if this is meant to be interpreted literally, but they seem to go to Destiny Island and talk to each other and sort of like speak and talk about what to do. And she starts to ask questions and like, again, sort of speaking to the larger thematic stuff, but is like, I don't know where I belong. Like, I don't know where I'm supposed to be, or like who I'm supposed to be. And like, how will I know where I'm supposed to, like, I don't know who to ask for that. Like, I don't know how to answer it myself, and I don't know who can tell me. And he's mostly like, you know, I don't know that I can tell you either. But I think he also is kind of like, you should just go back to Sora, please. Which again feels kind of bad, because it feels like he's kind of just trying to make Sora whole, but isn't just directly pushing her in there. I don't know. It's sort of bizarre, which might be the feeling that you're sort of building towards here, Brendon. Yeah. So Roxas and Xion at some point go out on this mission to fight Heartless, but Axel is like shows up and sort of reveals that they're thinking they've been fighting Heartless this whole time, but they've actually been fighting each other. And he sort of undoes this illusion that they've been put under.
Forget, is this in Neverland or is it? This is in one of the Disney worlds, right?
I think so. I don't remember where this is, to be honest.
It's like a forest or a jungle that has like a dense fog in it. I forget which world it is though.
Yeah, I do not remember. It's in a Disney world.
Yeah, it's in one of them. Yeah,
but so they've been like fighting each other, and essentially the organization is trying to just like make this problem go away by like, oh, we'll just keep whoever's stronger. But yeah, they're kind of under no illusions at this point about like what the organization's opinion of either of them are. Roxas is kind of demanding more answers from Axel at this point in the story because he's like, you clearly know more stuff than you're letting on. And eventually, like, he gives him a little bit of truth about Xion, like starts letting him in a little bit of like, here's where she's from, or like, here's what at least the organization's opinion of her is. Roxas gets like very mad at this of like, I can't believe you would like think this or hold this information back from me. And is also like, this also calls into question of like, why am I here? Who the hell am I even? And then also like leaves in a huff trying to figure out what his deal is too.
Yeah.
It's kind of brutal because the whole time you've seen Axel trying to come to the defense of both Xion and Roxas. He's definitely doing it in a way where he is misleading Roxas. He's kind of giving him half truths a lot of the time, but he is defending them a lot of the time against Sykes. Like Sykes is coming being like, we need to kill both of them or one of them. I don't care. Like, let's just deal with this. And Axel's like, no way. Like, what are you talking about? Or like plays it coy and doesn't give Sykes a real answer or whatever. And so you've seen him defend Roxas. And so it's this kind of like bummer misunderstanding of like, Roxas isn't wrong for feeling betrayed and like he's giving him half truths. But at the same time, like Axel is shouldering a lot here.
Yes. I think that's a great way of putting it. Axel, I think that's one of the many tragedies of this game. I think that is one of the bigger ones where Axel knows the truth basically from the very beginning. And he is trying his best to withhold that truth because he just wants to keep his like little friend group together. Which, you know, is important to him, even as a person who believes that he's not feeling emotions. I do think that you know, betrays this like deeper sense that he really does appreciate the time that he spends with them and wants it to continue. And I think it goes back to that earlier scene that we shouted out where he's like, things can't last forever. And I think that scene and those lines from that scene are delivered knowing full well that a day like this was going to come eventually. Like there's no world in which he was going to be able to withhold that information forever because, you know, at any point, any other member of the organization could have just revealed that information because Axel's not the only one who knows that. At any point, Sykes could have been like, hey, guess what, idiot? You know, and just like spilled the beans. But
it feels like a real life experience of like seeing an older sibling who like sees more of what's going on in the personal life of a parent and kind of tries to shield a younger sibling from that experience, you know, of like, I know more than I let on, but I'm kind of just trying to give you a couple of good years here before you have to like really grapple with like the heavier shit. Just tragic as hell. Xion eventually finds Naminé, I think in Castle Oblivion, if I'm not mistaken, and is like, hey, I like don't know what to do. And like, do you have any answers for this? And Naminé also asks her like, well, what do you want? Like, what's the thing that you want to do here?
Queen.
Yeah. Like the only person who gives her kind of a straight answer, you know?
Great answer.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
what do you want?
Xion, I it's hard for me to tell if this is an honest thing or if she's just kind of going off what Riku has been telling her, but she's like, I kind of just want to go back to Sora and like, you know, be done with this essentially.
Yeah.
Which is very brutal. Like it's very hard to watch, but you know, I think her feeling is that like, I don't like, she sees that she's siphoning energy from Roxas and she's like, I don't want to hurt him anymore. Like there's only kind of one direction we can choose here. There's no middle path. And she's just like, I guess that's kind of my only option here.
I think it raises a lot of questions. I think it introduces a more gray area into who is good and who isn't in this story. You know, it doesn't go as hard in the paint as something like Star Wars is recently. You know, this idea that like, hey, the Jedi are horrible. You know, like it's a bad like institution.
Zealots,
like the Sith are obviously evil, but the Jedi are no heroes, et cetera, et cetera. This continual reinforcement of this idea towards Xion that like, hey, you should just give up actually. What if you just went back and became Sora? That'll just be easier for everybody. That'll be easier for Sora. That'll be easier for Riku. That'll be easier for Roxas. I think like kind of a cop out a bit and one that like really rubs me the wrong way. And I think I don't mean this from the perspective of like, I think the writer should have done something differently.
Sure.
I'm like interpreting this from the story that we've been given.
Yeah.
I feel like these people could have figured out an alternative here. Like, I feel like Naminé and Diz and Riku and like, I don't know, Merlin or Mickey or whoever
wizards.
else.
Yeah.
Like, I
Magic
feel like
users.
these people could have figured out another path here.
Yeah.
Especially when we get towards the like culmination of this story, it really starts to beg this question that's like, did it really need to end this way? The answer is obviously no, and that's why it's a tragedy. Like that's the easiest way to kind of explain all this away, is like, it needed to end this way because that's what the story dictates. When you're taking it at face value, also it's like, how can I root for these people who asked Xion to do something like this?
I think like there's a world where they could have made a story where the people who need Xion to reunite with Sora and have Roxas reunite with Sora to make him whole chose to say like, no, like it's not worth it if we have to like essentially erase these people.
Right.
And like, you could probably still get to the same point where maybe both of them say like, I'm going to choose to do that. It's the genie thing, right? Of like, I don't want to force you to make this decision because it's cruel of me to do that. And so if they make it of their own volition, like that would have been a hard hitting moment. And I think probably would have made the tragedy just as powerful, because like they would have had to say, you won't remember me, that's not a thing you're going to be able to do. And so this is it.
And now's a great time to talk about Peter Pan and Captain Hook. One of the other worlds that you go to is Neverland. And I love that entire story because it essentially sets up Peter Pan as Batman and Captain Hook as the Joker. And there's this like, neither of us can exist without the other thing. Yeah. But also it sets up a neither of us can exist without the other thing. Yeah. In my eyes, that entire sequence exists to really say like, not that Xion and Roxas are like hero and villain in this case, but more so that they are codependent on one another.
Yeah.
Peter Pan and Captain Hook, they kind of need each other to like keep each other sane. There's this idea, this is definitely in the manga. I don't remember if this is in the video game. I'm going to be totally honest, but there's this idea that they present in the manga where Captain Hook is looking for all of this treasure from all these treasure maps he has. And it turns out that Peter Pan made all the treasure maps and hid all of the treasure because he just wants to give Captain Hook something to do. Because he's like, and if an adult doesn't have anything to do, then they'll just kind of lose themselves, is something that he says, which I think is like super rough. But he's like, I want to give him something to do. And like, this seems to keep him entertained. And I like having him around. And I think weirdly vice versa. And the story of that experience, or the story of Neverland in this game, essentially amounts to Captain Hook realizing the same thing. Like Peter Pan has already come to terms with that. Captain Hook has not. Yeah. And the story is about Captain Hook realizing that he needs Peter Pan and like he needs to continue this. And once he actually, quote unquote, gets the treasure, it doesn't actually mean anything to him. He's not really chasing that. He's more chasing the adventure than anything else. To me, the way that I think, should be interpreting that is at the end of the day, despite there being this prevailing sense from a lot of the characters who are outright telling Xion and Roxas there can only be one of you, at the end of the day, there is a way to make it work where, despite there being some kind of push and pull here, like in their case, literally with like, as one of them gets more powerful, the other one gets less powerful and vice versa. We've already seen that it can snap back and forth based on the Beast Castle stuff from earlier, that there is a path forward for them, that there is a world in which the two of them can exist simultaneously. And in fact, living in harmony might actually be the best thing, which raises some questions for me. Like, do you need Sora if you have two Keyblade wielders who together are as powerful as Sora? Like I think that's an interesting question that the game doesn't really outright pose, but instead decides to go this route where it's like, you know what? It can really only be one of them, though.
We need our special boy back, and that's the only option.
We need our special boy back. Yeah.
Marketing demands it.
Yeah. It's hard for me to imagine them making that wild of a choice, of like Kingdom Hearts 2 does not star Sora at all. He's actually just always suspended in this like pod forever.
Yeah. And instead you're playing as these two Organization 13 members.
Yeah. Who like you barely know at the beginning of this game. But
move over right.
And that's again one of the like, if you were to play this game, I think there's a world in which you might expect that. And I think that's one of the ways in which this game might be more interesting to play first than Kingdom Hearts 2. But then again, if you've played Kingdom Hearts 2 already, you're like, Xion's not in that.
Yeah, where's she
at?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that they could have found a way forward there, but yeah, I do wonder if following that thread would have led them to the conclusion of like, we can't have Sora in this game anymore. Like, that's not a possibility.
Yeah. And also like, my read specifically is not even blaming like the writers. It is blaming the characters. Yeah. Like fuck Diz.
Yeah, Diz is partially responsible here. Yeah. I think they could have also maybe like shown that Riku is like struggling with that decision to tell Xion like you should go back to Sora.
Yes.
Because I think that would have, they're so close to doing that.
Yeah.
And like, he's not somebody who's so callous and like closed off that he wouldn't feel that. And I think it would have been, very cool to see him be like, all I want is my friend back. But like, God, it's going to cost a lot to get there, you know?
Yeah. Because it's so huge and it's all like right beneath the surface. It's like all almost addressed and then not at all. And I think the fact that like we're playing this game and taking that away from it means that there is something there that we're grappling onto and carrying forward. But just like even an acknowledgement from him that, hey, asking this girl to essentially like dissolve into nothingness is a difficult thing to do would have really gone a long way.
Yeah. It would have been cool to see.
It would have been cool.
But we just get Peter Pan and Hook instead.
We get Peter Pan and Captain Hook and they get their happy ending.
Yeah. I guess like if I'm being charitable with the interpretation, like there could be a read here of like, this is how these big gigantic organizations will make you think. And the choices that you feel like you have to make are ones that are bad. And like you feel like you don't have a lot of options here, despite the fact you might. I don't think that that is ever really hammered on like in this specific instance, but you know, I think the game is definitely saying like, hey, having a job sucks sometimes. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a wider sort of message in there about like the system with which we organize work is not good for any of us.
One of the things they do in the manga that I really love is they have a couple days off. Yeah. And the first couple times Roxas has like no idea what to do on a day off. Like he just doesn't understand it. But they show what the rest of the organization members are doing on their days off. And most of them are like just kind of doing things that you would expect. Like I think it's Demix is the guitar one, like just sitting there playing guitar. Yeah. I forget his name, the guy with the cards. He just like plays solitaire by himself. And this is actually totally unrelated to everything we've been talking about now that I'm thinking about it. I think I just wanted to tell this story. They go through all of the members of Organization 13 and you just get like one panel that's showing what each of them are doing. And it ends with Xemnas. And Xemnas is just on the roof praising Kingdom Hearts for the entire day. He just has his hands up. And it's like actually the funniest moment of the entire manga to me for some reason was just that like that realization that Xemnas is like such a cold-hearted asshole that like even on this day off that he's like probably very begrudgingly given everybody to try and give them some semblance. Oh, this is how it connected. I remember now. Some semblance of freedom for a day. Like he's still just on the roof, like brooding and thinking about how he's gonna, I don't know, return to his body.
Yeah, thinking about the bottom line, the stockholders, and
yeah, exactly. Yeah, how can I increase shareholder value?
Yeah.
How can I increase profit?
So to kind of like get to the thing that we're dancing around. So yeah, Axel and Xion encounter each other in Twilight Town, and like Axel just barely beats her. Like he almost loses. Also, he's very angry in this moment. Again, kind of adding to the idea that like, you know, he's feeling something. I think he says something.
They're feeling stuff.
He says something along the lines of like, I'm the one who has to do the work. Like, I'm the one fixing all of this shit. Which again, just like tragic for this guy that like, again, he's carrying a lot with this the organization. At some point, Xion shows back up to Twilight Town with Roxas, and there's this wild scene where like she's like, I'm so close to turning into him, and like takes off her hood, and it's Sora's face underneath the hood, which is like startling and like borderline scary in a lot of ways. Like, oh my God, it's kind of a haunting look. Yeah. And she's like, I think this is it. Like, I think this is my last chance essentially before things like go farther than I can control them. And essentially they fight from there. Roxas is like, I don't know what's going on, but like, she starts attacking him and he's like, I don't want to do this, but like, what am I supposed to do here? Yeah.
What do you feel like is the read here? Like, why does Xion attack Roxas? I'm curious what you both think about that.
I feel like she is trying to give him a good reason to fight her, that if she just says like, I need you to release my heart and let me go back, he wouldn't do it, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, if we've already established that she wants to go back to Sora and is now like becoming Sora at this point. I think that's a good read that, yeah, she wants to give him a chance to fight her and like end it with giving him like less of a guilty conscience about it. But also I feel like Xion being like 6 months old essentially at this point just kind of also wants to like get to the conclusion and just end it in a way, and like whatever the outcome is the outcome. I feel like there is in this scene, I feel like she feels backed into a corner. Like this is it, and like the only option right now is to do something drastic. And I think that's what this is. Once again, kind of not being in control of the situation, but being forced to do something that seems to be the only thing to do given her lot in life.
Yeah, I feel like that's I feel like that's a pretty charitable read here. I think there's definitely a less charitable read also where she is making the decision for Roxas. Like, I'm done for. This is it for me. I have Sora face. This is happening. And maybe I can expedite it for you too. Yeah. Right? Because the idea is that we both need to return to Sora if he's going to be made whole again. So she's like making the decision for Roxas, which I think like sucks if that's the answer. And then I think also closer to what you guys are saying, I think there's another read of this where it's closer to like in some ways, because they have this push and pull between them where like each of them saps power from the other, like pushing Roxas to fight her in this form specifically is essentially like allowing him to regain his own power. Sure. Like the more he fights back against her, the more he can become his own whole being again. And then simultaneously while doing that, she's able to sacrifice herself and just like get to the end of the story. I don't know the answer here. I spent a lot of time reading online like people's takes on this because it is like deeply sad, the boss fight. Like you don't want to be doing it, but you have to be doing it. It is also, unfortunately, I forget who put this. I watched a video essay like months ago about I think it was King K. Yeah. Did this in a video essay, which is like, it's also unfortunately like the most fun fight in the entire game. Like the music rocks. The different phases of the fight are great. Happening specifically like in front of the Twilight Town tower is also just like such an amazing place to hold the end of this game. And yet it is like the most tragic moment of the entire experience in a lot of ways.
It feels like the end of The Last of Us 2 where you're like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. I would like to stop fighting.
Yeah. Totally. Yes.
So yeah, he does end up beating her. And like, God, the part of this scene that stands out so much to me is when she's like starting to fade away essentially. And he like approaches her and is like, who are you? Like, did I do this? Did I like make this happen just now? And is like already forgetting who she is because I don't know if we've mentioned it, but like, I think Naminé has set the stakes that like, if you do this and you allow yourself to return to Sora, like, not only will you go away, but like nobody's going to remember you either. Again, kind of speaking to like just the truest tragedy of the game is that like he won't even be able to remember his friend. The thing that Axel said is the thing that will keep them together even when they're not around each other. Yeah. Yeah. So sad. Just so brutal. And like
it's crushing.
Yeah, there's this scene where she essentially is starting to fade away and she's like, you know, I don't like this sucks and I don't really know like if there's another option, but like I need you to not do the stuff that Organization 13 wants you to do. Like it's a trap essentially. Yeah. Like they're manipulating us into doing this.
Yeah. And then he asks, who am I going to get ice cream with? We were supposed to go to the beach.
God. Oof. Just again, the reason why, so sad. And again, the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2 made so much more brutal of like this person who doesn't really remember why he wants to go to the beach very badly. And I think like, again, these games show people who are so convinced and set in their ways about how something has to work. And I think the game also presents a lot of moments where it's presenting you with contradictory evidence to that like Riku in a couple of scenes here still remembers Xion's name. And he's like, it's hard to remember her name already, but still does. Yeah. And clearly Roxas still remembers wanting to go to the beach, and he still remembers like he gets these kind of flashes of kind of memory between Xion and Axel. And even by the time he like reunites with Sora also has like these echoes of like, why is this important? When Sora says goodbye to Hayner, Pence, and Olette, and like once he becomes whole, he cries and he's like, I don't know why that happened just now. Like, I don't know what's going on with me. And so like it just feels like the game is sort of giving you this feeling that like they're not totally gone despite the fact what people think is the case.
Yeah. Or just like we're so many levels deep at this point too. Is like Sora is feeling sad seeing Hayner, Pence, and Olette because Roxas remembers Hainer, Pence, and Olette, but they are actually
like stand-ins.
A virtual version of the real Hainer, Pence, and Olette. What he's actually sad about are Axel and Xion.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Like, so wild. And I think the weirdest thing about this entire story is at the end of the day, it really means that the actual Hainer, Pence, and Olette are like totally removed from all of this.
Irrelevant to the whole thing.
Yeah, like they actually mean nothing. They just happen to also be in Twilight Town when these three were hanging out on the clock tower, which is very funny.
It's so funny. And like it's kind of sad that like they're already a trio and this game operates in trios, right? Like the there's always three people in a group, right? Like Riku, Kairi, Sora, Sora, Donald, Goofy, Axel, Xion, Roxas, and like
Leon, Aerith, and Yuffie.
Yeah.
The other classic trio everyone remembers.
Simba, his dad, and Scar.
That's a cursed trio.
Yeah.
Simba, Timon, and Pumbaa. Come on.
Yeah, true. Actually, though.
Peter Pan, Captain Hook, and the Crocodile,
and Shmi.
And Shmi. Why is Shmi's character portrait so fucked up?
It is, isn't it? He doesn't look
It's
right.
like it's looking at him like with the 0.5 iPhone filter from above his face for some reason.
It did.
And then everyone else has normal ones, but his is like distorted in like just like the strangest like Photoshop warp filter possible for some reason.
It did him very dirty in this game.
It feels in character.
It does feel in character for him to be like a dolly clock melting in real time.
So, Xion evaporates and like just essentially goes away.
Yep.
Sorry to snap back to reality here.
Sorry, Shmi.
Sorry, Shmi. But
Shmion.
Shmi.
That's Shmi's nobody. Shmion.
Shmion.
It's fucked up. Oh man, I'm gonna have nightmares about that.
Shmion.
So Roxas shows back up.
Sorry,
it's okay. To the world that
who am I gonna dig up treasure with?
Not Shmion anymore. Schmoxus? No, that's not anything.
Schmoxus. Sounds like a Christmas for schmuck.
Yes, yeah. Oh my god. So Roxas goes back to the world that never was, and you get this scene that plays a lot in the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2. Roxas fighting with Riku. Again, just sick as hell. They really went hard on the whole like them running at each other up a tower and like Roxas throwing one of his keyblades at Riku, who catches it and sort of like falls beside him. It's all so cool.
So that was the secret scene at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1.5 remake.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And initially like and also like Roxas is able to use two keyblades at this point because he's sort of like he has Xion in him at this point.
Yeah.
And does kind of beat Riku, like overcomes him in a kind of major way. And at some point, God, it's again brutal. Just that like Riku's clearly going through it too, because he says something to Roxas of like kind of goading him on, of like you're gonna have to try harder than that or something. And Roxas gives back the exact same response that Sora gave him when they were kids. And Riku's like, man, yeah, okay, you really are him. Like that's you are who Sora's like memories are. And at this point is like, I can't beat you normally, so I'm gonna have to just like get taken over by Ansem. So removes the blindfold and is overcome with Ansem energy.
Made me bring the darkness out.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And essentially just like catches Roxas, like holds him in the hand of. There's like a boss at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1 where there's like this total asshole behind Ansem
JoJo
fucking you up the whole time. Yes, it's exactly.
Yes,
it's JoJo. And just catches him, overwhelms him immediately. And Diz shows up and is like, all right, perfect timing. We got him. This is what we wanted. He also hides his face at this point, Riku does, because I think he like doesn't want Diz to know that he had to like give himself over completely.
I think maybe I'm wrong about this, but one of my reads of this also is that Riku is hiding his eyes for two reasons. Number one is the Ansem of it all. And the other one is that he can literally use the entirety of his face as like a weapon against Xion and Roxas, like literally overwhelming them with the memory of Riku as a person and just like knocking them into a coma. Because I do think that happens earlier in the game also. There's a scene where Xion and Riku meet and they're fighting and he removes his blindfold and that's what knocks her out, which is wild. It was such a cool little detail.
It is, yeah. And like that would make sense that like both of them have this huge connection to Riku that like they're both just like, I don't know what to do with this person standing in front of me here.
Totally, yeah.
There's also a scene, I think, prior to this where Riku meets King Mickey in the forest and like takes off his blindfold for a moment and like turns into Ansem. And like Mickey goes like, it's kind of on site. He's like, all right, I have to kill this guy. And then he puts the blindfold back on. He's like, oh, like I didn't realize like that this was you, which is kind of nice that Mickey is immediately just like, oh, it's Riku. All right, no problem. Like something weird must be happening, but that's all good. I'm cool with that.
Right. Yeah, we can figure this out.
He's going through it, but still him.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of devastating that like Riku knows that he might have to give himself over completely and is like, hey, if I have to do that, you need to take care of Kairi and Sora. Like I won't be around to be able to do that anymore. So like, please do that. Which is kind of bizarre because Mickey really doesn't show up that early at all in the second Kingdom Hearts.
No.
And so it's like
halfway
in. Like where you been,
Yeah.
dog? It's that like hilarious scene where I don't remember what he says, but they're in Hollow Bastion, I think, and they're like going through Ansem's old shit. And I think Sora's like, oh yeah, we have to like figure out the darkness or something like that. And Mickey's like,
Say, fellas, did somebody mention the door to darkness?
and then like it just cuts directly to him standing in the Organization 13 hood. It's just incredible stuff.
So silly.
Anyway, so yeah, Riku takes Roxas back to Diz, and then Diz is like, all right, we just need to buy ourselves a little bit of time to kind of like fix Sora again. So we're going to make this virtual version of Twilight Town to kind of keep Roxas safe for a little while we do that. And that it like pretty much directly leads into the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2. Yeah. Roxas is just like, oh, I can't wait to go to the beach. Very excited to go to the beach today.
Hanging out in the usual place.
Let's get some money together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good Lord. And yeah, that's the end of the game. Oof. Devastating. It's so sad.
It's a tough one.
How well it leads into Kingdom Hearts 2 is so good.
It's really cool.
Like literally right into the beginning of the game.
Yeah, I usually don't love that in movies where like at the end of Rogue One where it's like, hey, we're just about to start Star Wars 4. I'm like, I don't know if I needed that totally, but like for whatever reason in this one, I'm just like, wow, this is brutal. I think it's because Roxas doesn't know very much at that moment that it just characterizes his whole experience in such a different light.
Yeah. I think it's because for me that when I first played Kingdom Hearts 2, I'm just like, who is this jabroni?
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with
happening?
this guy. I don't have any connection with him. I don't enjoy him. Who is he? Is like absolute Raiden syndrome, you know?
I was just going to say, yeah, it's like the big, like, I don't want to play as this guy. This is not Solid Snake.
Exactly. And then now having this context, I'm like, man, I was really rough on him. I was really way too rough on this guy. He was going through a whole lot. I should have been there for him. I should have enjoyed it. So I think that's what I enjoyed about that bit is like, it just was kind of in conversation with my first experience with that character too. And like, okay, that's actually really cool how this game starts that way. Yeah.
I have not gone back to play Kingdom Hearts 2 since playing this one, and I'm like a little bit worried about what that experience is going to be like.
It's brutal.
The next time around.
I recently tried it just because we're kind of prepping again. It's been a little while since I played 2 the last time, like maybe a year ago or something.
Yeah.
And it's brutal. Like it's hard to play because again, you get this feeling of like, you know, it's speaking again to kind of the depressive aspect of like, I don't know why I'm sad. I just kind of am. And I don't really understand it, but like I still have to exist and do these things with my friends. And like, they're kind of asking me like, hey, why are you acting weird? Like what's going on? And I don't really have an answer for them. And once you've played this game, you kind of do have an answer, but it still feels like weighty in a way that I don't know. I wasn't expecting. Well, I don't know. I should have expected that, but yeah, it's really good. I think like that game is already very good without the context of this one, but it's incredible. And yeah, it's good. I also love Twilight Town just like as a place. The music is very good.
Me too.
And like the intro of 2 so acutely speaks to like that feeling at the end of summer where it's like, we're almost done. Let's try and not focus on it and like just have as much fun as we can. And for Roxas specifically, like it's literally the end for him. You know, he doesn't realize it, but like this is it. And it's tragic.
Man.
I feel like games usually, they kind of pull their punch when they are trying to do tragedy in video games that like usually there is some after credit scene that's like, maybe not though. Maybe it wasn't all bad, you know?
Everything's great.
Like maybe in another world this is okay. I just finished Mother 3 and like they could have gone full tragedy with the end of that one, but they didn't. And like I think they're probably better for it, but they could have, and that could have been it. But this game really is like, no, it's just bad. It's so bad.
I think this is not homework that I'm going to assign to either of you or anyone who's listening to this. But if you want the most like cathartic version of this possible, it's Dragon Quest XI S Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. The first 80 hours are like, classic fantasy story, but there is a pretty deep, I won't say a whole lot about it, but there's like a pretty deep tragedy that happens along that journey. Yeah. And then when the credits are done rolling, there's a whole like 40-hour post game that's all about like fixing it, which is incredible.
Unbelievable. I have been poking at that game for many, many years.
Great. It's the best way to do it.
It's really fun. And like, where did I just get to? I think the game like just opened up essentially, where it's like, here's some like things that you need to go collect, and you're kind of like not on as much of rails anymore. I think it's like right after you get a ship.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But, it's been good so far, but yeah, I think like it's the meme of the dude like mining and like there's diamonds right beyond where he goes. I feel like that every time I play Dragon Quest of like, I think that there is something incredible here. I just haven't gotten to like the best part of it.
I think you're still technically in Act 1 of that game.
Yeah, which is wild. I've already played it for like 40 to 50 hours or something.
Yeah. That rocks.
So yeah, that's 358 over 2 days.
358 days over 2.
Over 2. It's 358 days over 2 people's lives.
Yes.
Chase.
Yeah. 2 people have lived these days. That's the meaning.
Yes.
I regularly, when I'm thinking about this game, I don't remember the number and have to like think for a moment of what is the actual number of days here. I've said like 215 or like 110. It's so hard to remember for me.
I remember this just as 358.
Yes, yeah.
And that's it. The rest of it, I'm like, you know what I mean. 350. It's the one that says 358 in it.
So just like thematic stuff about this game, we've already kind of touched on a lot of it.
Yeah.
I think that like the only other thing that really like stuck out to me was this feeling that I was getting playing it about like predetermination and like what you are supposed to be or do. Because like Roxas and Xion specifically have an explicit purpose for what they're supposed to do. I think Roxas to a little bit less of an extent, but he's given a job immediately, whereas like Xion was created with intent, And I think that like that there's kind of an inversion of this story of someone trying to like find their purpose when there maybe is none. And I think this game still eventually gets there, but both of these characters are like shaken by the fact that they have a quote unquote purpose immediately. That like Xion is supposed to go beat up Heartless and also maybe be a backup plan for Roxas. And Roxas is supposed to go, build Kingdom Hearts by unlocking Heartless. And like, I think kind of similar to what you were saying before, Brendon, of like, they have to do their job while they're trying to figure this out too. Of like, I've got a couple hours in the evening where I can think about this, but that's really it.
Yeah.
And like there's that. And then there's also this like on the flip side, kind of a more charitable feeling is that they connect with each other that they kind of were born to do, right? Of like Xion is sort of a collection of Sora's memories superimposed over his memory of Kairi, right? Like she has Kairi's kind of face, and the same voice actress does Kairi and Xion.
Yeah.
They're leaving shells on each other's beds. And like clearly there's this like gesturing at the fact that they both come from Destiny Island, but don't know why they have this feeling towards each other. I don't know if the game ever really comes down on like, you have something you're supposed to do, or like you should totally reject the thing that you're supposed to do or whatever. But like, I just find it interesting that like usually a movie or a game or whatever will say like, you don't actually have purpose necessarily, and it's up to you to decide what that is.
Yeah.
And I think this game says that a little bit, but it also says like some people do have a specific job that they have to do.
Yeah.
And like, what do you do with that then? It's just, it's interesting.
It reminds me a lot of one of my favorite short stories ever by a writer named Ted Chiang that's called What's Expected of Us. It's a story where some people in the future send a message back in time. That's like very soon somebody's going to invent a little toy object that's going to be like sold in supermarkets and toy stores and stuff. That is literally like a little disc with a keychain on it. And the whole idea is that when you press the button, a light will flash up, like a little green light, like a little green LED will flash. but specifically the LED flashes 1 second before you press the button. And the whole thing is that as this toy starts to become more and more prevalent, because a lot of people start buying it starts to illustrate on a worldwide scale that there's no such thing as free will. Like, everything is predetermined, and people just start to essentially like unhook from reality as that happens. And it creates this like worldwide epidemic of malaise as people just are like, what am I supposed to do if there is no idea of free will? And this message being sent back in time kind of ends with, sorry to spoil this, it's only like 2 pages, so I'm pretty much giving you the whole thing, but you should go read it anyway. But the message ends with, you need to pretend you have free will. It is important to the continuation of the human race that you pretend that free will exists, or else we won't anymore. And it's pretty hardcore. And I feel like this game is weirdly going after a very similar idea. In a pretty big way, is like this game in a lot of ways, and it being a tragedy and the way that it ends is the answer to the question, what happens if those people don't continue to try and express free will? The more you just accept what's given to you, the more you kind of fall into this malaise over time. And I think what the game wants you to be walking away from it thinking is like, Xion did the brave and righteous thing by returning to Sora. I have my issues with that, as I've already illustrated, but I do think that the game is making that point loud and clear that like this was the right thing for her to do. This is the first moment where she gets to actually choose her own path forward. Whether or not that's the right thing, I think is up to player interpretation, but that's definitely the lens that the game is looking at that idea through.
I think that for both of them, it's a fun subversion of like the chosen one. Right, because both of them are like, they introduce them as like the Keyblades chosen, right? They have this big purpose for the organization, but then it's like, okay, chosen for what? Chosen to return to Sora, chosen to do this terrible thing that you want me to do as well over here. So both options that I have been chosen for, depending on which side is looking at me as a tool to be used, are kind of awful for me. Yeah, it's a fun way of like, okay, I have this grand purpose that I am working towards. I don't really understand what is happening. I just know that I'm supposed to be doing something. Everyone's telling me I'm supposed to be doing these things. But man, I really wish that they were good options. Maybe it could be me who's saving the world and not Sora. Maybe I wouldn't have to return to him or be used by Xemnas to create some sort of super world for him, or bring him back to his body, right? So I think that's a fun way of just subverting that very stereotypical gameplay trope or story trope in games. Yeah.
Especially at this time, I feel like games were still just soaking in the Chosen One story.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're just like, we have two chosen ones, but you don't want to be this chosen one. You really don't. Yeah, it's like the weight of expectation comes from both ends here. Like Organization 13 expects a lot of both of these people, but also so do the quote unquote good guys who are like, I also need something from you. I think Xion specifically, like every Kingdom Hearts game, this game is commenting kind of on identity. I think Xion is so interesting, especially when you consider that like there are multiple moments in the game where she appears differently to different people. Yeah. Like sometimes she will have her hood on depending who is looking at her, or her hood off if it's someone else. And like, I feel like there's so much being said there about like who these people want Xion to be. And that's kind of reflected back at them in a way. People see what they want to see. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Of like, it's sort of commenting on this idea that like sometimes this person that you have expectations on, like you're just trying to look for the thing that you want, not necessarily the person that's in front of you. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, it goes with the fact that, she really doesn't have much free will. It's always just who other people want her to be is who she is. Yeah, sad stuff. You've played Kingdom Hearts 3, David, yes. And I sort of suspect that there is some stuff about Xion in Kingdom Hearts 3. It's been a while since I played number 3, and I had not played 358 Days Over 2 at that time. So yeah, if she had appeared, I would have been like, I know of you like very tangentially, but it wouldn't have like hit in that same way. I'm very interested to see if she shows up. That's actually going to be the driving force for me to finish that game finally. It's a good last like quarter of that game. And you're like, okay, this is the game that they wanted to make, but then it's just like development hell, and felt like Disney butting its head into the development of the game more and like demanding things of them. I feel like I remember you saying that your description of Kingdom Hearts 3 was that there's a great game buried underneath an okay game. Yeah, a very okay and somewhat kind of monotonous game in the beginning. Yeah, I would say that first level is like the weakest level in the game.
Oh man,
for me,
that's the only one I've played.
Which is like the exact opposite of like modern game design, of like what they want to do.
Also,
you know?
the exact opposite of most Kingdom Hearts games. Like
True.
most of the first like mainline entries, both 1 and 2, like there's such wild shit happening immediately in both of those games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the first time you can control Sora in Kingdom Hearts 1 is when he's standing on those like stained glass windows in like the dark world, and you're like, oh god,
Like,
what is this video game?
Like, the organ is playing in the background.
Yes, yeah. Goodness.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I got a couple of listener questions if we want to pop through those real quick.
I would love to.
So first one, bit of a cheeky joke. It's from Rob. He says, "Why isn't the game just called Kingdom Hearts 179 Days?" Which
because Rob, if you pronounce the title correctly, it's not 358 over 2.
Yeah, it's not 358 divided by 2. It's 358 experienced 2 ways.
And we can't forget about Xion. That's our job as people who have played this game now.
Yeah, she
exactly.
lives on in
Remember
our
Xion
hearts
forever. Yeah, it's pretty fucked up, Rob, that you would ask that. Actually, it sounds like you forgot about Xion, which I would recommend not doing in the future.
Yeah. AJ themselves sent us a question that says, "I have no connection to this game, but what would you do with another 7 days to round out an even 365 2 days?"
Well, AJ, we have an answer to that in the form of the opening of Kingdom Hearts 2, which takes place over the course of 7 days.
I would do
that rounds out a perfect 365.
I would do some homework. I would try to solve, I think, 7 mysteries about Twilight Town.
Yep, 7 mysteries, I think. Yeah. Do some odd jobs to get some money.
Yeah.
7 sea salt ice creams.
Yep.
I would fight the main antagonist of Final Fantasy VIII in a weird combat simulation thing.
Yep.
And I don't know, I'd feel sad about my friends or something.
And really try to remember something lost.
Yes, something that I can't quite put my finger on.
Try to remember something I cannot remember for the life of me.
Baylaurels has 3 questions for us. The first one they asked is, if any of you did play the multiplayer, who are your favorite characters to play? I did not play the multiplayer.
Yeah, neither did I.
Yeah, same, unfortunately. I wish I could.
Yeah.
It sounds like it was very cool.
You were alluding to some update of, what would you call it, Melon Mix, Brendon?
Oh my God, yes. I can't believe, we were talking about this before we started recording.
Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't bring this up. I just learned about this earlier this week. There is a version of this game that is called Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2 Melon Mix that somebody's been working on. That reminds me a lot of Prime Hack. If either of you know Prime Hack.
Yeah.
So there's the Dolphin emulator, which everybody knows as like the way that you can emulate GameCube and Wii games. There is a separate team of developers who have created a fork of the Dolphin emulator called Prime Hack that is specifically built from the ground up just for playing Metroid Prime in like the best way possible. You know, like ultra wide monitor support, 16:9, whatever you want, mouse and keyboard support, like anything you can imagine to make the Metroid Prime experience better is in Prime Hack. It's very cool. Similarly, I think one person or a group of people have put together this thing called 358 Days Over 2 Melon Mix, which is a version of the Melon emulator that allows you to play Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days with a bunch of quality of life improvements, like blows it up into like 16:9, takes the HUD elements and like shrinks them down to make sure they're not taking up too much of the screen. Cause like if you were hypothetically to go and play this game on an emulator and blow it up, the internal resolution as high as you possibly can and make it full screen on your computer, the HUD would be taking up as much space as it would be on the DS screen no matter what, which is a huge portion of it. So this version of the emulator actually shrinks all that stuff down so it feels a little bit more natural to be playing in a 16:9 way. Also does a bunch of stuff to change if I am getting this correct, the cutscenes and the audio to match closer to what's going on with the like final mix version. Just like a bunch of really great additions that apparently makes this the best way to play this game. It also adds like full ass regular controller support. So you don't need to worry about the touchscreen inputs or anything, and the right analog stick like does what you think it's supposed to do in most modern games. It sounds like a great way of playing this game. And apparently they're also right now working on a version of Recoded that is similar. That is like in an early beta, but
that's cool.
That is playable on Windows, Mac, and Linux, which rocks. So if you have a Steam Deck, for example, you could play this on Steam Deck.
That's really cool. I'm searching through their GitHub right now. I don't see options for multiplayer, but that would be really cool if they were eventually able to like get to that, put that back in here. Cause it's like a totally lost part of this game at this point that you can.
You could play as any of the members of Organization 13, and they all have like their own weapons and skills and stuff.
Yeah, I've seen like cutscenes of them, or not cutscenes, but like videos of people playing as the other ones. Like they all play very differently. It's cool. Baylaurels also asked, best and worst worlds and bosses. I struggle to remember a lot of the bosses.
Yeah, they're kind of just like big, weird, heartless.
Yeah.
For the most part. What's the one that's like the big ball that spins around a lot? Where's that one from? Is that Neverland? No, Neverland is the treasure chest one.
Yeah, the big ball. Is that the one?
There's a big ball that spins around.
Is that the one in Beast Castle where it like attacks?
Maybe it is.
Like,
Maybe that's the ballroom one.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I remember liking that one.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's hard to beat the Riku fight. It's very fun. It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's just like thematically very important too. So maybe that, but like, oh God, worst ones. I don't know. I found the one in Agrabah kind of challenging, where you have to like go chase down the like thing in the sand, and it's like not always obvious where it's going to be.
It wasn't great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Worlds. I don't know. I mean, Twilight Town really rocks. I really loved going there anytime I was there.
Twilight Town's the best. Always.
I know.
And I think like story-wise, I think that Neverland is the most interesting. It's also like the only one where they're actually adding new stuff to the worlds that you have experienced in the other games.
Yeah, it's like a new location, whereas the other ones are like, I have been here before, mostly.
I think Neverland is also really fun. What is that guy's name? Lexius? Is that him? The one with the cards? Oh no, Luxord.
Yes, yeah. He has like kind of a buzz cut almost.
Yeah, he's got like a buzz cut and a bunch of earrings, and he has all these cards, and I just like his like weird, almost like paternal or like your older brother who's really older than you energy that he carries with him. Yes. And just the experience of the two of you in Neverland is like deeply silly in a way that I appreciate.
Yes, yeah.
Because a lot of it, he's the gambler of fate. They all have like subtitles. All of these people,
like Dark Souls bosses.
Dark Souls bosses, yeah.
Yeah, Marluxia, the grateful assassin. Demix, the melodious nocturne.
Oh my god,
they all have these names. But Luxord is the gambler of fate, and he spends a lot of time just kind of harping on this idea of gambling in Neverland as you're like drinking all these potions and getting big and small, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Wow. The last question from Baylaurels says, if you were remastering it for modern consoles, what would you change? Which is tough. Like, we've sort of been dancing around the idea that like the form of this game is important to it. Like,
yeah.
The checking in kind of every day to just do like one day of the game is like thematically good. It's like, it's well done.
Specifically really good for a handheld console, which I also think is an important thing to note, is like, this is a game that was built to be played in short bursts. And that's why there are these like individual missions that you're going on time and time again.
I feel like honestly that game design might not be as egregious nowadays with how so many games have like daily rewards for just completing one or two quests. It might be something that people are more used to if it's just, okay, I'm just going to go in, do a couple quick missions, and then that's it. And then just slowly burn through this game. Yeah.
I think the best example we can point to is another Tetsuya Nomura game, which is Crisis Core.
Sure.
Which for the PlayStation Portable was built like truly almost exactly the same way. These games are in conversation with each other in a pretty major way. I would consider this to be almost like a retry of Crisis Core in a big way. Crisis Core, for people who haven't played it, is a spin-off of Final Fantasy VII where you're playing as Zack when he is in Soldier, and it is like straight up the same. Like you are just going on missions for Soldier. And because it's a PSP game, the whole idea is you're just like knocking off missions one at a time. Every once in a while you get a cutscene, you hang out with Sephiroth, you learn about Sephiroth's backstory, you learn about Zack's backstory, you meet Aerith, all that stuff. And they just kind of like fill in the gaps between the two games. It's like really the same thing, but for Final Fantasy VII. And their answer to this question was just put it on the Switch and just put it on PS4, just make it look nicer. Like they really just remastered it and then put it on there. And I think at the end of the day, if you can make that decision with that game, you can also make the same decision with this game because they're basically the same.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Controlling the camera would be great.
That'd be so cool.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah. Hey, as somebody who has futzed around with an emulator to make that happen, let me tell you, it's great. Yeah. I would recommend it.
It's strange, or I guess not strange. It makes sense, but you see that mission structure pop up a lot in handheld games like this. Like I was just playing Peace Walker, the Metal Gear Solid game on PSP, which does exactly the same thing of like, you just do tiny little missions one at a time.
Portable ops.
Yeah, same deal. And I think that like some games take advantage of that in cool ways. And I think this one is kind of the example for that, of like the choice to make you check in every now and then and do a job almost adds to the feeling that the game is trying to communicate. And I don't think like you would miss that if you just played it like all in a row on the PlayStation 5 or something like that. But I think that there is something lost in that translation. David and I just played through The World Ends With You, like we were mentioning, and like That game had to make a lot of compromises to get onto the Switch, and I think that like it's not nearly as good on the Switch, just like control wise. But I think that like the gameplay of 358 is like not as like tied specifically to the DS. The only thing that I would be worried about is it's kind of annoying to move the little like chips that you add to like up your like equip your magic or your attacks or whatever. That would be kind of annoying if you didn't have a touch screen. Yeah, but like other than that,
yeah, we didn't talk about the panels at all. I like the panel system.
The panels.
Weirdly.
Yeah. The panels are cool.
I think this game has a lot of build crafting in a way you wouldn't really expect. Yeah. It doesn't mean a whole lot outside of some fights where it's like, this one's weak to magic and this one's weak to physical attacks. And, you know, you just decide which loadout you want for those fights. Yeah. But for the most part, you do get to just like craft the exact kind of loadout that you want and just rock that. And they give you a lot of options, and they're not the most exciting options in the world. You know, some of them are just like, you know, this is a Keyblade that's better for magic than for physical attacks. But honestly, that's enough for Kingdom Hearts, especially a portable one like this.
Yeah, you can really tune Roxas to kind of fight how you want him to. Like you can upgrade like how his like magic attacks sort of like work, or if he like hits harder or anything like that. And it's essentially the way that it works is that you have like just a grid of items that you pop into this like ever expanding panel system, I guess. Yeah. And so when you pop these little like chips in there, then it will, you know, either upgrade his combo or whatever. There's also some that like kind of like Tetrimnos where they're a little bit larger, and if you put like it's like magic up. If you put like a blizzard in there, it will turn into like Blizzara or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is very cool. It kind of like turns it into a puzzle, like almost Resident Evil 4, like inventory management shit of like, this is kind of another little meta game that I get to play while I'm playing this game, which it's like, that's fun. I feel like most of the time Kingdom Hearts is just like, which Keyblade do you want to use?
Yeah. Which is also a fun choice to be clear, but I appreciate the attempt at change here.
Yeah. Finally, the last question from Mack said, what are your thoughts on the 1.5/2.5 Final Mix collections making it a cutscene comp? So like essentially asking us like, what do we think about it just being a movie rather than the game?
Feels disrespectful.
I agree.
Because as my first experience with this story was the cutscene compilation, and then I started playing this game. It's just like, this game is good. I was enjoying like actually playing the game. I expected it to be like some unwieldy mess, which is like kind of the subtext of taking out of just the cutscenes and putting it into the compilation mix, right? But it's not. I feel like it definitely is something that is worth playing through. And I think maybe they just got a little scarred by all of the criticism for it being like this monotonous grind. But as we have all experienced now, like that is kind of part of the intended experience. It's not a glitch, it's a feature.
It's the point, baby.
That's the point.
Yeah.
So can you get a moving experience from the cutscene compilation? I did.
Yeah.
But I think it is much more poignant if you actually play the game.
I agree with you. I think there was like some challenges that they faced of like recreating this game in the engine that they had like built the remake of Kingdom Hearts 1 in, and they were like, I just don't know if
it's too good.
It's too good. Roxas would look weird with his 10 pixels or whatever.
Xion would jump out of the screen at you and live inside your world.
Honestly, hey, that'd be a better ending than what she got.
Yeah,
exactly right.
If she chose to not exist in the video game and just became a real person, that would be cool.
Just live in the virtual Twilight Town.
It is funny if you do emulate this game and you like turn on or you bump up the internal resolution a whole bunch just to get this like bumping out at 1080p or whatever. All of the character models look like PS2 or PS3 character models, and then like the keyblades and items and stuff are all still just pixels. Like they're just like flat pixels. So it's like, I'm sure that's exactly the problem they ran into. It was like, oh, I don't know if this is doable.
And it's also like, this is probably one of the lesser known games. And they were just like, is that even worth it? You know, like, I would, from an artistic perspective, yes. But like, I think just from a financial perspective, they may have been like, I don't know if we have even the time to do this. So I'm glad that it exists. I will say that, like, if you have no other way of experiencing the story, like, okay, sure. But I think it's a totally fine way to figure out like what goes on in here.
I'm curious how it sold. It sold 1.7 million units.
That seems like a lot.
It's more than Chain of Memories.
Wow.
Oh, okay. The people have spoken.
Kingdom Hearts 1 sold 6.3 million, which is pretty wild.
That feels appropriate. Everybody had a PS2 and everybody had feelings. So
Oh, yeah, all of these spin-offs kind of hovered around 1.6, 1.7 million, it looks
does
like.
it say how many copies Kingdom Hearts 2 sold?
Yes, 5.2.
Less than 1. That's surprising.
That's the original also. It it looks like Remix sold 1.2 and then the like bundle collection sold another 1.8. So
Wow.
it did very well.
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts 3, 6.7 million.
Really? What on earth?
6.7 million. Had to watch Jack Sparrow turn into 300 crabs.
It's a lot of crabs.
Or not, in my
Wasn't a lot of
case. You
crabs.
just saw...
Yeah, or not. Yeah, that's actually probably more likely
saw
in a lot of
Hercules.
instances.
Photorealistic crabs too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The vibe of that level was weird.
it was super weird.
Because it was already going for high fidelity stuff on PS2, and then to jump over to like PS4 era graphics is so wild.
I weirdly love the way the PS2 version of Pirates of the Caribbean looks. I think it
It's
rocks.
fun.
I'm a big fan.
It has a very strange
Yeah.
look to it.
I think it's very good.
Yeah.
Man, that Toy Story level though in 3, that's good. This is not a Kingdom Hearts 3 episode. We could talk about that some other time.
If you're dying to play it, we will happily
That one
have
was
another Brendon spot.
The Big Hero 6 level, that one was really good.
I didn't make it there. I think that's after Pirates.
They really started to cook with some of the worlds at the end. It feels like they like stopped working on the game and then started working on it again at some point, and they had like a better dev kit or something, or like now we're really like making some really interesting stuff in these levels.
That'll be the reason I finish the game, is if you guys want me on that episode. Just a heads up. That'll probably be it.
I will happily force you to play a game that you don't like very much.
Yeah,
I would do it.
It's a very mixed game. It's like it's an interesting experience to play the whole thing. But I think it's a worthwhile one because it does, I think, give a nice ending to the series. I don't know if it explains things or
I
ends it
wouldn't
as
expect it
well
to.
as it could, right? But it is an ending that I left with like, okay, I see what they are going for here.
Did you play the extra stuff also?
I did not play the extra stuff. It's on my list. It's on my backlog of things to get into because I hear that is going to be very important for number 4 because 3 definitely ends on like a little bit of a cliffhanger-esque.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that there was going to be a 4th, you'd be like, oh, I guess this is just how they're ending it.
Yeah.
Which is, felt, I guess, for Kingdom Hearts in general, kind of a fitting ending in a way. But we'll see. We'll see what your opinions are.
It feels so silly to be such a big Kingdom Hearts fan and have not finished Birth by Sleep, have not even really played Dream Drop Distance outside of the couple hours I put into it for an Into the Aether episode once. I have not finished Kingdom Hearts 3. It's very silly.
There's a lot of game there.
Not only is there a lot of game, I think Kingdom Hearts still works without having all of the experience. It's just
I agree.
Totally running on vibes that like if you can just feel it, that is the canonical way to play these games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will say Dream Drop Distance is pretty good. I'm playing through that, or like kind of playing through that as well in the like remake collection that they've put out. And like it's pretty good. It gets really fun.
That's in that remake collection also?
It is, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's the one I've tried like starting like 3 or 4 different times.
I've done the same
and
thing.
I've just, for some reason, I just bounce off of it pretty fast. But I'm curious to see if having like a larger screen and just like a more precise gamepad than the 3DS is going to make it a more enjoyable experience.
It did for me.
That one's specifically weird because it's the one that feels the most like they just took the console experience and put it on a handheld.
Yeah.
And then you bump up against the physical limitations of a handheld in that case.
It's just like, man, do I want to be able to control this camera? Oh boy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Never have
and
ever.
even if you have the new 3DS and use the Circle Pad Pro or
The
like
nub.
whatever the extra nub thing is, that is not a replacement.
Does not do it. No, does not do it.
It gets good though. I feel like that game just started to do so, like it gives you so many tutorials in the beginning and like doesn't really start doing like full blown Kingdom Hearts stuff until a little bit later. But like
They had a lot of systems in that game.
a lot of systems that like
That's one with like Pokemon stuff in it.
there's some
Little
Pokemon
pets,
stuff which I have almost entirely ignored and the game is fine.
Wow. You ignore your pets. Let it be known.
Yeah. But like the worlds that they go to are really interesting. They go to Hunchback of Notre Dame, which like is pretty good and pretty fun.
That's sweet.
I also like eventually you start like actually switching back and forth between Riku and Sora, and like that is really good and also fills in a lot of like who Riku is, which is good as hell too.
All right, I'm gonna just play all these games.
Yeah, play the video games. They're good video games. Okay. Hey, Brendon, thank you for coming on for this.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
you
you
being here. It's a lot of fun.
Oh wow, that's it.
I
Okay,
think so.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Wow, we did it.
Yeah, we did it. So now if one of you will just strike me down, I will fade from your memory forever, and this recording will be the only evidence.
It's you or me, Chase.
Who will I
One of
record
us
a
is going
podcast
down.
with?
I jumped ahead there. Did any of you have anything more to say about this game?
I don't think so.
It's a lot of fun. Play it.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a good game.
Play it.
Yeah. It's a really feel-good romp through various Disney worlds.
It's a real rom-com.
It's a real Roxas com.
Roxas com.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. No, it's
It's been great to be here
Yeah.
and to talk about this game in particular. Anytime I can hold this game in particular up, I will do so.
Yeah. At this point, so will I.
It
I
deserves
wasn't
it.
expecting that.
Hell yeah. 358 Defenders, rise up.
For anybody who has made it to this part of the podcast, thank you for listening. Appreciate you being here. I will skip the rest of the outro that we normally do. You know the deal. Podtimism.com is where you can go check out any of our stuff. If you're feeling so compelled to, I don't know, review it, feel free. If not, that's okay. Thank you for listening to this part. That's all we really care about. And Brendon, do you want to tell people where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, sure. Into the Cast.online is how you can listen into the Aether. MaxStories.net/NPC is how you can listen to NPC. And Wavelengths.online is where I write. And you can find links everywhere else that I exist out there if you so desire.
Sweet.
Great.
Thank you. David, do you have any gaming wisdom for the end of this game?
Gaming wisdom. Ooh, man. After this one? Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Hold your friends close because you never know what is around the bend.
Wow. Real gaming wisdom. Every now and then it really comes out of like a true...
It felt necessary to do a real one this time.
Yeah.
It couldn't be like, go eat some ice cream because it's good for you.
Sitting on a tower is definitely not dangerous. You'll never fall off.
I will say ice cream is good for the soul. I'll give you that. Eat all the ice cream you want. That's fine. But hold your friends close.
Yeah. And do it somewhere close to the ground.
Yeah, maybe not like 100 stories up or whatever.
Find the biggest ledge you can get yourself to. Take all your friends. Get into one big pile.
Take your all the belts that you have, put them on, wear a big black robe, and eat ice cream and feel something.
Belts and robes and ice cream. That sounds like it's gonna be like a Craigslist personal ad or something like that.
Need a third friend to feel things about existential crises with. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time.
All right, see ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
TWG, the worst garbage, online.